Juju, what's up? Secret time, secret time. A very mellow secret time. I'm whispering just because my voice is fine. Just, just in case. Hi guys. How are you guys doing? We're gonna wait for people. I have way too many fucking index cards right now. Aw, thank you. Wow, 2 years. Holy shit. Why is the sound not doing? The sound is now doing. Oh, I'm not wearing anything. What am I? Hang on. Oh my god. I'm not. Jesus. I'm a silly little goose. I just got dressed and sat here and waited. Forgot to put on all my stuff. I know, it's crazy that it's been 2 years. I was like, something's wrong with the way that I look. Yeah, my face is naked. Well, not my face, but you know what I mean. There we go. That's better. My lips have been very dry. Fucking stay. Aw, well, thank you. Don't want to look at the mess over there. It's fine. Oh, I wanted to. Most of you guys have already seen it because you're on Discord, but I got a different little. I don't know if y'all remember. It was many streams ago where I was like, oh, I'm gonna organize my seed box and like repackage them into these resealable bags because the ones that they sent them in, you cut them open, you can't close them. And then like the seed packets that I did have didn't fit in that box, which seems kind of silly to me. So anyway, I got this box on Etsy. It's like an old index card filing box. So it also had like the ABC tabs. So my seeds. This also isn't even all of them. I ran out of envelopes. So I ordered more. I'm thinking about maybe taking out the ones that are particularly bulky because they don't really sit nicely and putting them in the previous seed box. I don't know. We shall see. I do still have some room. And then I'm thinking about like designing and cutting out of vinyl like seeds. Maybe some like leaf motifs or something, you know? Something fun. So then that's my nice little seed box. It's got a little bit of... It's fine. I can live with it. And it came with all of these index cards. I don't need this many index cards. Even a little bit. That's so many. I don't... Anyway. That's what I wanted to show you guys. Socks. What about socks? I forgot what I said. And then we can also have TikTok. Oh, seed box. Then yes, socks, indeed. Gonna have my TikTok up because it's been a hot minute. Nope. Oh, stop. Poor connection. Of fucking course. My internet sucks so much. I hate it. It is infuriating. Internet these days is not supposed to be as slow as mine gets to. For no reason. No fucking reason. Also, I mildly started organizing the pile of projects that I have piled on my rocking chair, so that we can maybe start getting through them, so that they're not just, you know, sitting forever, and maybe I can wear some of the clothes that I have there. For example, my skirts that have been in there for like a year, something like that. Yeah, so maybe, you know, some days since we finished Super Mario, maybe we'll just do like some sewing days. You know, I'll probably do some on my own time as well. I won't keep it as like an exclusive for hanging out with you guys, but we shall see. Also, we're not going to talk about my hair. I need to wash it. It's having a time right now. We're not going to talk about it. Anyway, everyone here? Everyone here? All right. Oh, I didn't actually hit go live on TikTok. I'm a professional. I'm very professional. Anyway, where were we? So, slight recap. Molly Moon met up with Lucy, who is the librarian who hypnotized her to find the Hypno book and have the adventure from the first book. And the child actor that she stole a part from in the first, I almost said movie, in the first book, has been kidnapped. And Lucy believes that this guy, Primo Cell, is permanently hypnotizing celebrities to promote his products, and is also going to run for president, and that he's very dangerous, blah blah blah. And clearly Molly Moon, the child, is the only person for the job. So she and Rocky and a few other friends are in Los Angeles right now. That's where we are. Anyway, Early the next morning, Jerry tapped on Molly's bedroom door, waking her up. He was wearing swimming trunks, water wings, and a huge hotel bathrobe that trailed on the floor. "Come in, Molly. Breakfast is by the pool. We're going to have pancakes." For a moment, as the sun washed into the room, Molly was still half dreaming that she was back at Happiness House on a boiling hot morning. Then the memory of what she had to do today drowned her carefree thoughts. She groaned. Half an hour later, Molly and Rocky were sitting in their pajamas on the floor in Molly's room. The contents of Lucy Logan's briefcase were spread out before them. "Okay," began Molly. "To find anything out, we're going to have to check Primo Cell's home and his headquarters and the stars he's hypnotized. If we do all that, we may find something out about Davina." "I suggest," said Rocky, "that we get Nachman in here, ask him what he needs for lock breaking and computer code cracking, and then, tonight, when Cell's office building is empty, we should break into it. If Lucy is right, and he is planning to hypnotize and keep hypnotized thousands, maybe millions of people, and if he's already got hundreds under his control, he can't have all the details in his head. He'll have to keep some files, either written down or in a computer, and there has to be a secret place where he keeps them, in a locked cabinet or a locked room. I bet there's something there that will tell us whether he's had anything to do with Davina Natel." "But why his headquarters tonight? Why not his home?" "Because he'll sleep there, Molly. Wake up." "Yeah, you sheeple, wake up. Come on." Okay. Molly pulled the map of LA toward them. "His headquarters are in Westwood, near Beverly Hills. We can catch a 67 bus. "The bus? That will make us inconspicuous. We'll take Petula and we'll look like a couple of kids walking the dog with our, uncle." 30 minutes later, Mr. Nachman stood docilely in front of them. He was wearing a short-sleeved shirt decorated with exotic birds and a pair of flower-patterned Bermuda shorts that Miss Trinkleberry had bought him. His mouth hung open so Molly could see he had 6 or 7 fillings. Petula sniffed at his hairy, flip-flopped feet. "I hate to hypnotize him again," said Molly. "He was doing so well, and I really hope that doing something criminal doesn't make him miss his old life." "We're not interfering with his self-improvement," said Rocky. "It's just one night, and it's all for a good cause. He won't remember he's done it." "Okay," said Molly, concentrating. "You, Nachman, are going to accompany us tonight. You will tell Mrs. Trinkleberry that you will be doing some work for the benefactor. You know, the man who Miss T thinks sends us money at the orphanage. Say you're changing his front door locks for him." "Yes," Nachman nodded. "You must bring everything you might need for opening locks, for breaking codes of combination locks, and for cracking codes to access files and computers. Imagine you are going to be robbing a very secure office. Is there anything special you need?" She paused while he thought. "I will need explosives." "Well, I'm afraid you can't have them. They're too noisy and they make too much mess." "Some locks," said Nachman, shaking his head, "may be impossible to open." Molly looked at Rocky worriedly. They couldn't use explosives. They didn't want Cell knowing they'd broken in. "No one is to know about this," said Rocky. "No one." "Meet us outside the hotel entrance at 10 tonight," said Molly. "Now, go and spend the day with your birds and Miss Trinkleberry. As soon as you leave here, you will come out of your trance." Nachman nodded like a programmed robot and plodded away. "Good work," said Rocky, yawning. "We might as well go down to the pool, too. We've got the whole day to spare. I want to practice my diving." "What, and get recognized again?" said Molly sharply. "Who knows who will be down at the pool? If Cell really is who Lucy says he is, he'll maybe have spies about. We can't risk it." Rocky breathed out exasperatedly. "I suppose you're right." He picked up a photograph of Cell and began to draw a beak and wings on him. In the distance, the hotel parrot squawked, "Have a nice day! Have a nice day!" Molly closed the curtains against the sun, and picking up the hotel's video rental menu, she resigned herself to a day of watching movies. Hiccupy. At 10 that night, Molly left Miss Trinkleberry sipping a pink drink and eating pretzels in the hotel lobby, where she was blissfully happy to be overhearing Hollywood gossip about the Academy Awards. She was completely ignorant as to where Molly, Rocky, Petula, and Nachman were really going. Outside, they made their way to the bus stop across the street from the hotel's driveway. Molly and Rocky were wearing canvas hats to help hide their faces. Knockman was dressed in a black turtleneck and black trousers. He was carrying a small canvas bag that Molly supposed had tools in it. "You look, professional," said Molly. "Thank you," said Knockman. "It's his cat burglar look," Rocky whispered in her ear. "I hope it's not too professional looking. We don't want to look suspicious. I'll take the tools." Petula sniffed the air. For some reason it was full of the scent of lots of dogs very nearby. She looked around and saw behind her a huge cutout of a dog's face. Below it were the words, "Bella's Poodle Salon and Dog Hotel." Although the writing didn't make sense to Petula, the smells did. Her nose sensed a Labrador, a Yorkshire Terrier, a Bulldog, and some sort of Oriental-smelling dog. There were other dog breeds she didn't recognize at all. "Hello, welcome." On top of all their scents were shampoo smells, perfumes, and the aromas of essential oils. The place was obviously a dog beauty parlor. Petula hoped that after they'd done whatever was making Molly nervous, she'd get to go there for a wash and blow-dry. "Aroof!" she barked at Molly, to show her what she'd found, but Molly hardly heard her. Scary thoughts were rolling around and around in her brain, like snakes on roller skates. Perhaps, she thought, Prismocell had other hypnotists working in the building, big thugs who worked all night as security guards. What would she and Rocky say if they were caught? How would they explain Knockman, who would be standing there all dopey and hypnotized? To Molly it felt as scary as diving off a boat into the sea where lots of sharks swam. "Do you think he works late?" she asked Rocky nervously. "Nah," Rocky replied. "He likes to go out at night with all his famous pals. His hypnotized celebrities, I mean. You can bet he'll be in a fancy restaurant somewhere." The blue and white 67 bus shook them from their worries by stopping with an Eric-spelling sigh. They climbed aboard and fed the meter with the tokens they'd bought at the hotel. Molly was glad it was practically empty. The bus chugged westward. On both sides of the streets were interesting buildings. The Cowboys' Retreat was a log cabin fronted with flashing neon lights. The Emerald Crown was a hotel shaped like a wedding cake with a carpet that rolled down to the road like a green beach meeting a tarmac sea. They passed another Gondoli for President poster. It was next to a giant lizard-shaped billboard above the record store. The purple groovy listening reptile was wearing sunglasses and earphones that looked much more cool than the cheesy cowboy-hatted politician. Crowds of people swarmed around the entrance to a music venue called Whiskey A Go-Go. A slapboard on the side of it showed who was performing tonight. "Wow, I'd like to go there," said Rocky. Molly was looking at a person sitting under a lit-up sign that read, "Star Maps for sale here." "What are star maps?" she asked the bus driver. "They're maps that have all the streets in Beverly Hills and Hollywood on them, and they're marked to show you where all the stars live," he told her, repositioning one of his ornamental cactuses on the dashboard. "What?" said Molly. "You mean the maps show you exactly how you can get to the stars' houses?" "Yeah, of course. You can see what the outside of their homes look like, but you can't go near them. They got security and guards, otherwise fans would be crawling all over their grounds." "Can I hypnotize you? You feel like hypnosis is a scam job?" I mean, it's not. But also I'm reading right now, so not right now. Molly was amazed. "Are we in Beverly Hills now?" "Yeah, see the way the curve is kept so pretty with all the flowers? And up those streets there, it's even more pretty. They got palm tree avenues and lawns, and if you go way up into the hills, you get the real big mansions. But now we're heading toward one of the business districts." The bus shot past a big pink building called the Beverly Hills Hotel. "It would cost me 2 weeks' salary just to stay one night there in their cheapest room," said the driver. Soon they were in Westwood. "Nice meeting you," the driver said. With a squirting air sound, the doors of the bus closed, and as if relieved to have farted, the bus went meandering down the road. Molly, Rocky, Petula, and Knockman stood on a wide sidewalk near the entrance to a smaller street called Orchid Avenue. Halfway down it, big and reflective, its walls made of dark blue glass, was the Cell Center, Prismocell's building. Molly recognized it at once. Its flat roof was crowned by a giant golden emblem, a huge disc that looked as if two black claws were turning and swirling around a golden plate. Molly shivered. A small park with lemon trees lay opposite. Trying to look as unnoticeable as possible, Molly and Rocky led Knockman and Petula over to a bench. Petula began to investigate smells. It was a good spot from which to watch the entrance to Cell's fortress. That symbol on the top looks like claws grabbing a coin, said Rocky. Or black flames devouring a golden world, suggested Molly. Or black eyelashes around a golden pupil of an eye. But if you don't know about Cell, then it just looks like a strange design. You don't think Cell is hanging about in there, do you? Asked Molly. There's only one way of finding out. The investigative party made its way up the mosaic path into the night-lit entrance of Cell's building. Under her feet, Molly noticed, was the black and white image of a magpie picked out in the tiles. Knockman followed, waddling like a penguin. The black glass door opened as they walked towards it, and a burly security guard with short, spiky hair stared at them ominously, his eyes hooded by forest-like eyebrows. "Can I help?" he asked, in a voice that suggested he would prefer to strangle them. "Yes, please," Molly replied politely, but inside she was smoldering. She never liked rude grown-ups. Who did this hyena man think he was? Confidently, she raised her green eyes to his. Molly's hypnotic power was leagues ahead of any normal hypnotist's. In a few seconds, she could absorb the atmosphere that surrounded a person and judge where his weaknesses were. She could feel how much hypnotic pressure he would need before he gave in. As she eyeballed the security guard, the fusion gauge inside her, like a thermometer and an oven timer in one, told her that old spiky hair was well and truly cooked. He stood with an expression of awe on his face, as if he'd just seen a goddess. "Are you alone here?" Molly asked. "Yes." Molly glanced around for closed-circuit cameras and spotted two. "Who looks at the film on the cameras?" she asked. "Is someone looking at them now?" "No," the guard shook his head. "The film goes into a memory bank and is looked at only if there is a problem, like a robbery or a break-in. I have a panic button that alerts the police. Then they call the company where this film can be viewed. On no account are you to press that button tonight." "No, ma'am." "Okay, you must take us up to Prisma Cell's office immediately. Are you expecting anyone in tonight?" "No, ma'am." "Do you ever get unannounced visitors? Does Mr. Cell ever pop in?" "Sometimes, ma'am." "Do you know where he is tonight?" "No, ma'am." "Well, I think you'd better show us up." After a ride in a silver-walled elevator, Molly, Petula, Rocky, and Knockman found themselves walking along a blue stone passage into a circular rotunda. The marble walls bore the same image of the claw-like motif. At a black door, the night watchman punched a code number into an electronic lock. The door opened softly, and they were inside Cell's office. The room was bathed in a denim blue light, the street lighting that filtered through the blue glass windows. "You may return to your desk," said Molly. "When you are out of our sight, you will forget that we were here and that you were hypnotized. You will behave as normally as you can. If Mr. Cell arrives, you must call up to this room without him hearing and tell us he's here. We'll let ourselves out. What's the number for the door?" 0960. "Good. You can go now." The guard left. "Okay, let's get down to business," said Molly. "Where does he lock things up?" She cast her eyes around the modern room. There was a floor-to-ceiling window at one end, overlooking the little park. On one wall hung a huge oil painting of a beautiful magpie, sitting in a nest full of shiny things, coins, jewelry, precious golden objects, and a big, icy diamond. The opposite wall was lined with bookshelves. The floor was striped black and white. A black lacquer Art Deco desk stood in front of the window. On it were two white elephant tusks set on silver bases, pointing to the ceiling. "How disgusting," said Rocky. I'd rather be shot myself than have an elephant tusk as an ornament." Then he looked at the floor, and his mouth dropped open. He crouched down and stroked it. "The carpet is wall-to-wall zebra skin. A zebra fur carpet." Rocky was too appalled to be able to say what he felt about this. Petula sniffed the floor. It smelled like horse. Feeling like a fish in the blue, water-like light, Molly threw him a pair of bubble-lot rubber gloves. "Here," she said, "put these on. We mustn't leave fingerprints." Wearing her own pair of gloves, she crossed the room to Prismocel's desk and began opening drawers. Rocky checked the bookcase for a hidden safe. Knockman stood silently by, waiting for instructions. In a bottom drawer, Molly came across documents that showed what businesses Primo had recently bought. More papers listed the monies companies had made. The biggest ones were Prismo Speed, CompuCell, and Cell Oil, but even the smaller ones, In the Groove, Vita Well, Schlick Schlack, Fashion House, and Mighty Lighties, were massively successful. Molly had never seen such big numbers as those that blinked out from Prismostell's bank statements, but these numbers weren't what they were looking for. Then, as Molly was about to scoop up what looked like an address book, she felt something soft under her fingers. She pulled it out. In her hand was a small black mink glove. It would have fitted Molly perfectly. "Rocky, look at this. Is it?" She looked in the drawer to find the glove's partner. "Why would Prismocell have a child's fur glove in his desk?" she whispered hoarsely. Rocky was about to open his mouth when they heard voices in the hallway outside. Molly quickly pulled Knockman behind the desk and pushed him under it. They all sank breathlessly out of sight, like two minnows and a sea slug diving behind a rock. "You will be as quiet as a dead person," Molly whispered frantically. Knockman immediately rolled up his eyes and stuck out his tongue. "It can't be Prismocell," hissed Rocky, "or the watchman would have called up." The electronic lock beeped 4 times. "Petula!" Molly gasped. Petula was examining the mane of the zebra skin in the corner of the room. It smelled of some hot, faraway place. She spat out the stone she was sucking to have a good sniff. The door to the room opened, and a woman's voice, suddenly loud, said, "Sumptuous toilet paper is going well." Molly prayed desperately that Petula would come over quickly, before the lights were turned on. "It's been helped by the campaign with that boxer," said the woman. "King Moose?" prompted a man's voice. "Yeah, by King Moose saying that it's tough enough for him to use." The lights then blazed. Molly was so scared she thought she might faint. The vein in her throat was pumping so hard that her neck hurt. If the pair, whoever they were, came too far toward the window, they would see her, Rocky, and Knockman squashed under the desk. As for Petula, she was an alarm bell just waiting to ring. The people were standing by the magpie picture. "Have you seen the commercial?" asked the man. "King Moose having a boxing match with an animated toilet roll and losing? Yes, it made me laugh." "And you don't do that too often, Sally." "No need to be cutting, Sinclair. You're not a bundle of fun yourself." "This job sobers me up." "Maybe you should put more comedy on your channels," suggested Sally. "There's lots of comedy," said Sinclair. "I just don't have time to watch it. Our father works me too hard. Now, can we hurry up? Surely you know where the file is. You're in here every day." All was silent except for the noise of shifting box files as Sally searched. Molly was rigid with nerves. Rocky stared at the floor, trying to be as still as a piece of furniture, hoping that he'd left everything in order. "This is it," said Sally's voice. "It's a small company that makes watches. It's called Timesy." "Timesy?" "Dad's letting me handle the project on my own. He thinks we should be able to pump Timesy up until every other person in America wears one of them. I'm going to try my hardest to make it happen. I'll get that Tony Wham to promote him. A kung fu kick has to be right on time. It'll be that kind of ad campaign. I can't wait to tell Primo. You're very eager to please. That's all right for you to say, teacher's pet. Let's not start that argument again. So what do you want me to do?" "Give the watches some free advertising time on Iceberg TV, of course. Here, you take these copies." Molly froze as the man's steps neared the other side of the desk. Suddenly he said, "I don't believe it. That dog's gotten in here again." Petula looked up from her corner behind the door. "What dog?" "This dog, this pug. Look, they told me a dog got into the building yesterday, and look, it's back again. How did it get in?" Molly opened her mouth wide, but no noise came out. "Poor little thing. I wonder how long it's been here. Here, sweetie." Molly heard Petula shuffling up to the strange woman. She was always a sucker for having her tummy tickled. "Aw, look at it, the darling. Shall I tickle your tummy, your tum-tum? I suppose it wants to audition for one of your dog food ads, Sinclair." Sally laughed. "Aw, she's so sweet. Look at her little nose. Oh, you gotta give her a job, Sinclair." I'll call her in for the dog biscuit commercial next week, said Sinclair, chuckling. Shall I take her home? Molly bit her lip. No, Sally, the dog lives around here. Get a grip. We'll just drop her outside on the way out. With that, the lights in the room went off. Come on, Puggy, said Sinclair with a whistle. She doesn't want to come. She wants to sign a contract first, laughed Sally. Go on, thought Molly. Sally must have picked Petula up then, because the next thing they knew, the door had closed and the conversation between Sinclair and Sally faded. Molly and Rocky waited for several minutes before daring to crawl out of their hiding place. Molly found her legs were shaking. Until she'd been trapped behind the desk, she hadn't properly realized the seriousness of the situation they were in. They lay on their stomachs and peered out of the window. Soon they saw the heads of Sinclair and Sally emerge from the office. The dark-haired woman put Petula down, then laughed and pointed as Petula walked straight up to the door of the building again. Petula did look like some sort of budding acting dog who couldn't take no for an answer. Sinclair irritatedly beckoned for the woman to get into the sports car parked at the curb. With a noisy rev of its engine, they were gone. Brr, Molly shivered. Let's get on with this. We've got to get out of here. She bent down to Knockman. You can be alive now, but be nice and quiet, please. Knockman clambered out. There must be somewhere else here where Sel keeps his secret stuff, said Molly. Unless he keeps it all at home. Molly looked up at the picture of the magpie. Moments later, Knockman was balancing on a velvet chair and wearing bubble-lock gloves was lifting the picture off the wall. There, like a second sunken picture, was a microwave oven-sized safe. In the center was a copper-colored dial with little numbers etched around it. Bingo, said Knockman, knocking his head against the safe enthusiastically. Can you open it? Asked Molly. Sure thing, declared Knockman. This is a Glock & Gutman, 1965. A beauty. I've opened 3 of these before. The accent's written, by the way. They're like rich old ladies. Difficult to charm, but worth it. Worth it? Yes, worth it. I don't think Miss Trinkleberry would be happy to hear you say that, said Molly, thinking how close to the surface of his skin were his old criminal ways. Knockman looked ashamed. But, okay, open it. Knockman nodded and thrust his face clumsily toward the safe as if he were about to kiss it. He banged his nose. Then he put his ear up to the copper wheel and with his right hand began to turn the dial. I hope he can do it hypnotized, said Rocky. Aha, gloated Knockman, clicking the dial 45 degrees to the right. It better not be alarmed, said Molly. Mulled Knockman, turning the dial 6 degrees to the left. How does he do it? Beats me. I wish he'd hurry up. Ah, grunted Knockman, as if he'd just caught a fox undoing the latch of a chicken run. While Knockman hummed and tutted and clicked, Molly reached for the micro camera in her bag. What had Sel hidden in the secret safe? All at once, Knockman sighed. He pulled the safe's handle down, and a satisfying clunking noise reverberated inside. Hey presto, he said. The door swung open. Then his face dropped with disappointment as he saw there were no diamonds or jewels. Instead, 4 black file folders, one on top of the other, lay inside like sleeping monsters. Knockman passed them to Molly. You go first, said Molly. No, after you, said Rocky. Molly opened a file. Wow, Molly could hardly believe what she was seeing. Staring up at her from the top sheet of a stack of paper was a photograph of Cosmo Ace. It stuck above the heading, Heaven Bar Campaign. Dates and addresses were printed below, but this was not the familiar handsome face from the TV ads. This man looked dazed, or drugged, or hypnotized. Lucy was right, said Rocky huskily. With shaking hands, he and Molly took each file and rifled through them. They had indeed hit the jackpot. All the sheets inside were laid out the same way, with the name of a person at the top of a page and a passport-sized photograph of them on the right-hand corner, like a stamp on an envelope. Molly and Rocky couldn't contain their amazement. So many of them! He's hypnotized practically every star who exists. Some pages bore a note in red ink. It simply read, E-Day. Molly came to Suki Champagne's sheet. It was strange to see her world-famous face in the small black and white photograph. Suki Champagne didn't look her usual, lovely, vivacious self at all. This Suki looked dopey. Her sheet also included the words, E-Day. What do you think E-Day is? Asked Molly. The day he's got what he wants? I don't know. Rocky replied. Look, Billy Bob Bimble's here too. Oh, good old Billy Bob Bimble. Shall I take a picture of every document? Whispered Molly. Yes, I'll hold them up and you photograph them. So that was what they did. Molly took off her sticky rubber gloves and began snapping away. Photographs of celebrities she recognized and ones that she didn't passed before her camera. There was Hercules Stone looking half asleep, Gloria Heelheart with her mouth open like a goldfish, King Moose, cross-eyed, and Stephanie Goulash smiling like a plastic doll. But there weren't just actors and pop stars in the files. There were American TV announcers, sports stars, newscasters, business leaders, newspaper editors, journalists, artists, writers, restaurant owners, doctors, police chiefs, army commanders, and politicians. I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to hypnotize the President of the United States, said Rocky. The documents were in alphabetical order, and Molly noticed there were lots of empty pages with names on them, but no photograph. Were these people Prismocell planned to hypnotize? On a few of these, the red ink said, activate before E-Day. What is this E-Day? Molly asked again. A day is planning something big. We'll have to find out what it means. The worst sheet they found was Davina Nattel's. She stared out of the picture like someone who'd just seen a bomb go off. A blood-red cross traversed her page like a murderer's mark. Oh, Molly gasped. You don't think he's... Rocky stared in horror. So Prismocell really did have something to do with her kidnapping. But why? All I know is we're playing with fire and we should get out of here as fast as we can. Hello. No, I'm not going to call you. And also, don't call me baby. Rocky and Molly worked as quickly as possible. They crouched on the floor, hoping that flashes from the camera wouldn't be seen from the street. Knockman sat on a velvet chair, occasionally muttering tick-tick or click-click or and picking at his thumbs. An hour later, Molly had taken 760 pictures, and the magpie picture was back in its place. He'll never know we've been here, said Molly, unless he's watching us. Just over on TikTok. Don't give me the creeps, said Molly. The building was quiet as a tomb, the street outside silent as a graveyard except for the distant horns and sirens of Los Angeles traffic. Molly instructed the security guard to order them a cab and then, after they'd gone, to completely forget they'd been there. At all. Petula was still waiting outside the building. Molly picked her up and gave her a hug. You're a naughty monkey, Petula. Back at the Chateau Marmont, Knockman was instructed to forget the evening, too. You can tell Miss T that we spent the evening at the benefactor's house, which is very fine, very posh and full of expensive furniture and thick carpets. You can say you met the benefactor, but only for a moment, as he was off to a business dinner. Say he looked like a kind old man, suggested Rocky. Yes, with gray hair and a mustache and wearing a pink suit. Yes, say he looks like Father Christmas in a pink suit. Fantastic. If Miss Trinkleberry asks you any other details, say you don't remember. Molly couldn't help adding. And, Mr. Knockman, well done for the way you've improved. You're a much nicer person than you were. Everyone really likes you. Knockman nodded. Then Molly snapped her fingers and woke him from his trance. They went back to their bungalow and hid the camera and rolls of film in a drawer in Molly's bedroom. Molly found Lucy's telephone number in the briefcase and dialed her number. Lucy will be amazed, she said. Hope her phone's not bugged, said Rocky. At the other end of the line, the hollow ringtone continued. She must be up. It's 10 in the morning in Briarsville, said Molly, but there was no answer from the cottage. I suppose it takes her ages to do her shopping on crutches, said Rocky, yawning. Call her tomorrow. Molly longed to tell Lucy about Davina and the hypnotized stars. She wanted to ask her what they should do next. She put the phone down reluctantly. Got a fucking eyelash bugging me. See you in the morning, Marshmallow, Rocky said, trying to make them both feel less scared. Molly had never felt more like a marshmallow. Soft, squashy, and lightheaded as a cloud. She was so exhausted that she hardly had the energy to get undressed. She went to sleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. The second day at the Chateau Marmont was hotter than the first. In fact, the temperatures were breaking records. Fans whirred in the lobby where people sat flapping books under their chins. The atmosphere of Los Angeles was also heating up because the Academy Awards were the following night. Already in the hotels and smart houses, famous directors, producers, actors, actresses, screenwriters, musicians, lawyers, and agents were getting their beauty sleep and preparing themselves for the big event. The clothes designers, hairdressers, beauticians, jewelers, limousine companies, flower shops, image therapists, and speechwriters of the city were working overtime. All over town, parties were being organized, and the names of the Oscar nominees were on everyone's lips, except Molly's. She hurried through the lobby. She braved the sizzling midday streets to visit a photo lab to have the film developed. Now the precious information was in a large envelope under her arm. She kept her head down because every time anyone crossed the hotel floor, the whole lobby looked up to see whether they were famous or not. Molly didn't want to be recognized again. With the knowledge they'd gleaned the night before, she felt very vulnerable. She half expected to find 2 heavy-duty cell protectors waiting for her outside their bungalow. But she rejoined Rocky in her cool, air-conditioned bedroom without incident and sat down to look at the photographs. That's 217 not hypnotized, but 542 already under his power, Rocky said. And then, hypnotized or not, alive or dead, there's Davina, Molly solemnly reminded him. How do you think Cell does it? Asked Rocky. Does he use a pendulum? Or do you think he does it like me and uses his voice? Or mainly his eyes? We just don't know, Molly said with a shudder. What's for sure is we're never going to be able to dehypnotize over 700 people. All their addresses are here, said Rocky. Maybe, but even if we managed to dehypnotize 2 a day, there's only 365 days a year. We'd be at it for over 2 years. And what if Cell goes and hypnotizes them all over again? Anyway, how are we going to dehypnotize him without him realizing we're doing it? He'll be onto us. He'll snap us up like a crocodile snapping at waiting toddlers. Yes, said Molly, finding the image sickening. She collected the pictures and locked them in her room's safe. She could hear Miss Tringleberry outside telling Roger not to climb quite so high into the tree. Molly wandered onto the lawn to watch the others in the pool below. She looked down at them enviously. We better call Lucy. She might have a good idea of how to dehypnotize these stars. Oh, wouldn't it be lovely to have nothing to do? No work, no mission. They could see Miss Tringleberry in an old-fashioned bathing suit and a broad-brimmed hat, lounging on her sun-chair, with a pile of celebrity magazines on her lap. She was throwing bits of cookie to nearby blackbirds. A white-suited pool waiter was placing a tall green drink on the table beside her. Mr. Knockman was on the diving board about to jump. Roger's feet were dangling from the big bowed tree near the wall. He was hanging blue paper airplanes on its leaves. Hang on, I have an itch. Very important. Nope, wrong side. Mr. Knockman bombed into the water, making an almighty splash. This was followed by a yell for Miss Tringleberry. Simon, how could you? You've soaked my Oscars special. Molly suddenly brightened. She turned to Rocky. When are the Oscars, Rocky? Molly, haven't you noticed? This whole place is buzzing with Oscar fever. The Oscars are tomorrow. I can't believe you didn't know. Well, I kinda did, said Molly thoughtfully. I just hadn't realized they were so soon. Who goes to the Oscars, Rocky? Everyone goes. All the important movie people. Yes, said Molly. She remembered all the television clips she'd seen of the Academy Awards. There were so many awards. Prizes for the best actors, directors, cameramen, screenwriters, soundtrack composers, special effects makers, designers, and producers. I don't know why I didn't think of it before. It's perfect. Where else could we dehypnotize each and every one of these stupid stars so quickly? We'll go to the Oscars too. Rocky raised his eyebrows and smiled. Sounds like fun. Fun for some, but the trouble is, Rocky. Oh, come on. For us, it's work. If it's tomorrow, we've got to get moving. If we're going, we've got to look like movie people's kids. I'll need a dress, we'll both need shoes, and you have got to get a tuxedo. A tux what? A special evening suit. We better get to the shops quick. We'll call Lucy later. With that, Molly ran inside to get her knapsack. Little did they know that nearby, some new hypnotism students were having their first session. I think we need it to be really quiet if we're going to do this, Gemma said, kneeling on the carpet. At that moment, there was a scratch at the door. Jerry let Petula in. Okay, Petula, you can come in, but no noise. Petula cocked her head and lay down by the bed to watch what the two young humans were up to. Gemma and Jerry crouched in front of a glass vase. In it sat Victor, the biggest mouse. Victor was annoyed to have been lifted out of his warm straw bed where he'd been sleeping off his jet lag. He chewed on a piece of seed and shot what he hoped was a filthy look at the two humans outside his container. His favorite human, the boy he called Big One, and the girl who was often with him, were looking at him, their bodies distorted through the glass. The furry beast was there too. Okay, so we've done the first bit, said the girl. You're sure that the mice squeak like that, Jerry? Yeah, it's the kind of squeak they do before they go to sleep. The boy made a whispery, squeaky noise. Squeak. You do it, he said. The girl copied him. That's it. Do that. Jerry studied the photocopied instructions in front of him. It says, he read, repeat the animal's voice in a lullen way until the animal becomes rocked into a trance. I can't read it. A trance. Gemma took the paper. It's like a dreamy thing just before you get hypnotized. A bit like being in a sort of daydream. We gotta make Victor go into a daydream? A trance. Once the animal is in a trance, you will know it from the fusion feeling. Okay, let's do it. Victor scratched his ear with his back foot and wondered whether there were still any potato chips hidden under his exercise wheel. All of a sudden, the girl outside the vase began to squeak repetitively, like a very large mouse. After 5 squeaks, Victor pricked up his ears. The girl seemed to be trying to communicate with him in mouse language. Her tone wasn't exactly mouse. It had a strong human accent, but it was an understandable squeak all the same. It seemed to translate to slap, slap, slap. Victor assumed she meant sleep, sleep, sleep. He felt slightly peeved. That's exactly what he had been doing before he was so rudely awakened and put into this glass vase. Petula lay with her head between her front paws. She often listened to the mice talking to one another. What was more, Petula understood what Gemma was trying to do as well. Living with Molly in New York, Petula had seen, heard, and more importantly, felt lots of people being hypnotized. Petula could feel Gemma trying to hypnotize Victor. The feeling wasn't right, Petula thought. The girl's voice was calming, but she didn't have that extra something that Molly had. Petula edged forward until she could see the mouse in the vase. She growled softly. Victor watched the furry beast approach. He knew it wasn't dangerous, as he'd often run around the floors where it had been laying. Once he'd even run over its back by mistake. But one thing he'd never done was look into the furry beast's eyes. Now he did. Petula's eyes looked kindly back at him. Victor found the experience lovely. It was like looking into the eyes of a lovely, big, friendly, relaxing, tasty, friendly, lovely, relaxing cheese. And the more that he looked at the cheese, or was it a furry beast, the more Victor felt himself tipping sideways. When he finally slumped onto the bottom of the vase, as comfortable as if he were lying in a predator-free, flower-filled meadow, he felt as if all he ever wanted to do was lie in that vase, with the furry cheese sitting there forever. Look at Victor, said Gemma. I think I've done it. You mean Victor's hypnotized? Have you got the fusy feeling? Fusion, Gemma corrected him. I don't know, but I must have. Now we have to make him do something, Jerry. What shall we make him do? You can definitely relate to Victor. I know, said Jerry, and got up to switch on the tape player. Victor's meadow was suddenly filled with gentle panpipe music. Through the curved bowl, he saw Big One moving around rhythmically to the sound. Victor was far too relaxed to move. He shut his eyes and imagined that he was sitting in a hammock-shaped pedal under a great big furry beast cheese. Gemma and Gary were disappointed at Victor's failure to dance, but at least they felt they'd hypnotized him, which they hadn't, of course. So Petula is also learning how to hypnotize, which is the dog. At 5:30, Molly and Rocky arrived back in their bungalow. Rocky went to the kitchen to get them both drinks, and Molly checked her alarm clock. She really wanted to call Lucy Logan, who had still not answered the phone. So as soon as Rocky came back with some cubes, she dialed the number. The phone was answered by a husky, groggy, half-awake voice. "Lucy, is that you? It's me." The librarian coughed and cleared her throat several times. Yes, it's Lucy here. Molly, is everything okay? It's the middle of the night." "Everything's fine," said Molly. "Sorry to wake you up. Lucy, we've made some amazing discoveries. You were completely right about Prismo's cell." And Molly launched into a detailed description of the past 24 hours. She told Lucy that what they had found in Prismo. I keep saying Prismo, don't I? It's Primo. In Primo Cell's office, Molly explained that they planned to go to the Academy Awards to dehypnotize as many stars as they could, and to find out, if they could, whether Davina was still alive. Molly hoped Lucy would know what the mysterious red-inked words that spoke of E-Day referred to, but she didn't. After 10 minutes of talking, the conversation felt like it was coming to an end. Molly asked, "And what about you, Lucy? Have you had any more trouble?" "I'm fine. It's difficult to get to sleep with my burns, that's all." Lucy sighed. "I'm astounded by how well you're doing, Molly. But please, do be careful. Remember, the man's not normal. He's a monster." "We'll be careful. And Lucy, is that money arriving soon? Sorry to ask, but we're running up big bills here." "Of course, Molly. I'll see to it right now." Then she added warmly, "Send my regards to Rocky, and take care. Keep in touch. Goodbye." Molly put down the phone. "So what did she say?" asked Rocky. "I'll tell you while we're getting these files mailed to her. But look, we've got the rest of the evening, and I think we need to relax. Let's go swimming." "Are you sure?" "Why not? If we're going to the Academy Awards, we might as well get used to the idea that people might recognize us. And anyway, even if he did see that ad we made, I'm sure Stella is too busy with Oscar stuff to be worried about a couple of hypnotists." After a trip to the front desk to organize express post to Briarsville, Molly and Rocky moseyed down to the pool. Even though it was almost 6, the sun was still oven hot. There weren't many other guests outside. Miss Trinkleberry and Gemma waved to them from a shaded table where they were eating ice cream. Molly and Rocky found sunbeds near the pool's waterfall. Rocky dived into the turquoise water to join Roger, while Molly put on a straw hat. She patted her thin, spammy legs. She wanted them to get nice and warm before she had a swim. She shut her eyes. The heat of the afternoon, the smell of something being barbecued, and the sweet sound of whistling blackbirds nearby made her feel nicely lethargic. The sun shone on her eyelids, and from behind them everything looked orange. She listened to the waterfall splashing into the pool, and she began to unwind. After a minute or so, Molly looked about. 2 businesswomen were sitting at a table under an umbrella, their backs to her. Both had coiffured hair and wore suits, one light blue, the other fuchsia pink. She looked at the pink-suited woman's hair. It was flecked with white and golden streaks, and a turquoise shell clip was fixed in the middle of it, catching the sunlight. The clip twinkled and danced in the sunlight, and the more Molly stared at it, the more the woman's hair looked like the mane of some beautifully groomed horse. It tumbled down the woman's back like spun gold. Then, as she gazed, with the sun beating down on her, Molly detected a hint of the fusion feeling inside her, and remembering what had happened when she stared at the bush baby in Briarsville and the suitcase at the airport, she wondered if, by gazing at the tortoiseshell hair clip, she could get the cold fusion feeling again. And she did. Molly felt the strange shift from warm to cold. As the tingling cold started to creep up her spine, a thought struck Molly. Perhaps if she let the feeling come completely, her hypnotic powers would be made stronger. In a moment of boldness, Molly decided to let the cold fusion feeling blossom inside her. So, staring at the tortoiseshell clip as if she wanted to hypnotize it, Molly invited the feeling in. At first, the feeling was timid, like a trickle, creeping up her body. Then it began to flow up her legs like a stream, and then, in a sudden arctic wave, it crashed through the rest of her body, making her shake. Molly's veins felt as if they were flowing with ice-cold, sparkling mineral water, and the diamond around her neck felt as cold as a glacier. It was a very weird sensation. Molly didn't feel entirely comfortable with it, but she held the feeling captive. She stared at the hair clip. She felt as if she'd hypnotized it. Had she? Molly noticed that everything had gone quiet. Very quiet. Even the pool's waterfall was silent. Molly wondered why it had been switched off. Still in her bubble of cool, she turned to look. What she saw made her jump, for the waterfall had indeed stopped falling, but not in the normal way. It was now a solid sheet of water, as if it had been suddenly frozen. Except it was not iced. It was shiny, like wet water. Molly glanced to the left. Jerry, who had been playing, was still as a statue, and in the most awkward position. He was balanced on one leg while his other foot was in the air, where he had just kicked a ball. His eyes were looking up to where his ball hung, as if from an invisible thread in the sky. To his left, Gemma was giving Miss Tringleberry a lick of her ice cream. Miss Tringleberry's tongue was poking out of her mouth like a red worm, half buried in the pink icy goo. Gemma was blowing a gum bubble, and Mr. Knockman was saying something approving to her, his words silently frozen in the air. The smoke from the businesswoman's cigarettes hung like columns of cloud. The whole world was still as a picture, a three-dimensional picture. The cold fusion feeling filled Molly completely. All she could hear was the sound of her heart beating and her frightened breath. Molly felt that if she let go, in the same way as she turned off her eyes when she hypnotized someone, the cold fusion feeling would go away. At least she hoped it would. Molly looked for Rocky. He was horizontal in mid-air, diving into the pool. Petula was lying under a table by the shallow end, playing with a stone. Then Molly saw Roger. He was under the water. Without oxygen, he could be drowning. Trying not to panic, Molly focused her mind, and as if she was taking the bottom away from a tank of water, she instantly drained the ice-cold feeling from her body. It flooded out in a nanosecond, and in that time, without so much as a stutter, the world started again. Rocky dived, Petula barked at him, Roger surfaced. Miss Tringleberry licked, and water came crashing into the pool. The diamond round Molly's neck still felt cold, but Molly felt hot again, and very relieved to be back. Shakily, she got up and dived into the pool as well. Water shot up her nose. "Rocky, something really weird has just happened," she spluttered. "Yes, you've just dived in with your t-shirt and hat on," said Rocky, before doing a handstand under the water. Molly pulled her hat off her head and frowned at it. "No, not that. Rocky, listen." She grabbed his arm and pulled. "Something stranger than anything has just happened to me." "What?" asked Rocky, floating on his back. "Well," Molly faltered, in a scarcely contained whisper, "I think... Oh, this is going to sound like I've gone crazy." "What? Tell me." I think I made..." Molly hesitated. "Made what?" "I think I just made the world stand still. I think I stopped time." Crazy what hypnosis is capable of doing. "I didn't notice," said Rocky. "Yes, stupid, you were part of the stillness." "When? I can't remember it happening." "You're not listening," hissed Molly. "You were frozen." "What, like -10 degrees?" "No, not cold frozen. Frozen still. I was cold, though." Molly pointed at the pink-suited woman. "I was concentrating on that woman's hair clip, trying to sort of hypnotize it." "Why were you doing that?" "Because, well, I actually first got this feeling in Briarsville, but I didn't tell you about it because I thought you'd think I'd broken my promise not to hypnotize anyone. But I wasn't hypnotizing anybody, I was hypnotizing things. That's what makes this cold fusion feeling happen." Rocky's eyebrows wobbled. "And anyway," continued Molly, trying to ignore his suspicious look, "I was hypnotizing the hair clip to get the cold fusion feeling, and this time I let the feeling completely come. I went really cold, and when I looked up, everything had..." Molly looked at Rocky's disbelieving face. "Honestly, Rocky, everything had stopped. Time had stopped, except I hadn't stopped. You had, Rocky. You were halfway through a dive, stuck in the air. I'm not kidding. Then I let the feeling go and everything started again, and you dived into the water. Rocky looked worriedly at Molly. Did you drink something from the minibar? No, Molly glared at Rocky. I'm telling you, this is true. Rocky put his hand on her shoulder. Molly, I think we better get out of the water. I know you think what happened was true, but maybe you got too much sun today. I got that thing from the sun once, and when I went on that long walk, and I had a fever, and everything seemed... Cripes, Rocky! Sometimes you drive me crazy. If you don't believe me, I'll prove it to you. Molly swam to the edge of the pool and pulled herself out. Rocky followed her. Sit on this sunbed, she told him, and look at your feet. Rocky shot her a worried expression, but obeyed. Molly began to stare at the orange life belt that was hooked up on a post. Within a few moments, she had summoned up the strange, cold feeling again. She drew it up through her body until the life belt pulsed orange in front of her eyes, and the rest of the world vanished into a blur. At last, with a cold, sparkling snap, the coldness swamped her. Just as before, everything went quiet. Molly disengaged her eyes from the belt, but a part of her still concentrated on the cold fusion feeling, cupping it in her body and picturing 2 imaginary stoppers that prevented it from flowing out of her feet. It required tremendous effort. She looked to her right. Everything was still. Miss Trinkleberry was holding up her knitting, inspecting it for holes. Jerry was bombing into the pool, splashes frozen like great watery petals. Roger was like a statue. The pool manager was handing drinks to the 2 suited ladies. Rocky was staring at his feet. Molly clicked her fingers in front of his eyes, but he didn't blink. She put her ear to his mouth. He wasn't even breathing. She looked about her. It was difficult to believe that no one was watching her, that she was the only person moving, the only person breathing. It was terrifying. What if everything got stuck like this? But Molly knew she must do something to prove to Rocky that time had just stopped. Taking a deep breath, she slowly stood up. With enormous concentration, so as not to dispel the fusion feeling, Molly began to walk toward the poolside toy basket. Her body tingled. Each step was scary. Holding the world still was an incredible strain. She picked out an inflatable frog, a duck rubber ring, and a whale-shaped raft. She brought them back to Rocky and put the duck on his head like a crown, the raft under his feet, and the frog on his lap. And to make extra sure he believed her, she picked 3 yellow flowers from a pot and put one between his toes, one between his fingers, and the last in his mouth. For a moment, she sat still, trying to understand what was happening to her. She looked beyond the pool. Was the whole of Los Angeles still? Was the whole world still? The idea was too crazy to contemplate. Yet Molly felt it was so. And then, like an animal sensing approaching rain, she sensed something else. For a moment, Molly was sure she felt movement somewhere out there. Then she couldn't tell what she was feeling. Her heart was beating too fast and she was too scared. She desperately wanted everything to move again, now. She switched off her concentration and unplugged the fusion feeling. Simultaneously, Rocky jumped in surprise and threw the pool toys off him. He spat out the flower. "Argh!" he shouted. He turned to Molly in amazement. How? How did you do that? How long was I still for? How did you do it, Molly? Did you find another book? Molly went to bed that night feeling exhausted and nervous. The prospect of gate-crashing the Oscars the next day was frightening. She was very concerned that she and Rocky would be caught. But even more disturbing was the new hypnotic skill she'd discovered. Nowhere in Dr. Logan's hypnotism book had stopping the world been mentioned. Having no wise words on the subject, Molly felt she was sailing in completely uncharted waters. She didn't know whether stopping the world was a good thing or a bad thing. She didn't know whether it was dangerous. It was certainly spooky. She heard a tap at her door, and Rocky came in. "I'm tired, but I don't feel sleepy," he said, sitting on the end of her bed. "Same here," said Molly. "I checked the TV to see whether the time is right everywhere in America and in the rest of the world. It is. You've bitten off a lot to chew with this stopping time stuff," he went on worriedly. "I'm glad it's you who can do it and not anyone else. I mean, imagine what you could do. You could get away with murder." "Oh, don't," said Molly, shivering and pulling Petula up onto the bed. "I don't mean real murder. I just mean you could play all sorts of tricks on people. If you were a criminal, you could easily do burglaries or kidnap someone. Stop the world, do the kidnap. As far as everyone was concerned, the person would just suddenly disappear. Or if you wanted your football team to win, you could freeze the world during a penalty and you could reposition the ball so it went in the goal." Molly buried her nose in Petula's fur. The idea that she, one small person on the planet, had made the whole world stop made her feel dizzy and terrified. She felt it was a power too big for her. "I'm going to call Lucy in the morning and ask her if she knows about this," she said. "I'll try not to think any more about it now. We must get some sleep, Rocky. We're going to need loads of energy tomorrow." Rocky nodded and switched off the light. "Sweet dreams, Marshmallow," he said as he shut the door. "You mean good luck with your nightmares," said Molly, and she pulled up her blanket over her head. The day of the Academy Awards rose sunny with cloudless skies. Petula woke before everyone else. She checked the small stash of stones that she'd hidden behind the TV set, chose an egg-shaped one to suck, and slipped out of the bungalow grounds via a hedge tunnel. From the steps above the swimming pool, she could see the giant painted poodle jumping over the sign for Bella's Poodle Salon and Dog Hotel. She could smell some sort of tasty meat breakfast that the guests there were being fed. She looked down at her paws. Her claws most definitely needed a clip, and her skin had felt itchy ever since the plane journey. The doggy shampoo smelling place reminded Petula of a comfortable washing house she'd visited in another big city. Knowing that a good grooming would really revive her, she turned toward the hotel's driveway. Crossing the 4 lanes of road to Bella's was quite difficult, and Petula found herself standing on the central partition for 5 minutes as she waited for a lull in the traffic. But soon she was walking up to the blue metal gate of the dog salon, which she pushed open with her paw. Down some steps was a door. This swung open as an athletic man came out of the shop with a Pekingese under his arm. The Pekingese smelled of I'm sorry if that's wrong. Smelled of lilies and had 4 pink ribbons in his hair. Petula trotted smartly past them. She was looking forward to this. Inside the shop, everything was for dogs. There were racks of collars and leashes hanging like tempting jewelry. There were beautiful fur cushions for dogs to relax on, fine feeding bowls, displays of specialty dog foods, snacks, chew bones, and edible dog cigars. There were piles of luxury dog toys and bottles of dog fragrances, dog coats in every size, and even dog shoes for those days when dirty paws weren't wanted. A woman with frizzy blonde hair and huge hooped earrings was sitting behind the counter, adding up a bill. Behind her was the salon, where a big furry chow chow was standing in a special glass box that was blow-drying his coat. As Petula crossed the shop floor, her long nails made a distinct clicking sound. Bella, the salon owner, looked up, expecting to see that one of her dog clients had escaped from the spa room next door. Instead, she saw Petula approaching her, wagging her tail. Petula put her front paws on the woman's lap. "Why, aren't you the most adorable little thinga-ummy bobbit? Where's your owner, Cutie Pie? Oh my, aren't your claws long?" Of course, Petula said nothing. She gave Bella one of her most winning looks, her head tilted charmingly to one side. Bella looked at the door and then down at the velvety black pug. "Why aren't you wearing a collar, honey?" Bella got up and peered outside. The pug dog seemed to be ownerless. Petula barked. Bella smiled and patted her. She could always tell when dogs wanted a grooming. She looked at the chow chow enjoying his blow-dry and consulted her watch. "Okay, my darling, you're a precious little thing, you are. Come with me. Let's give you the treatment." This was how Petula found herself getting the full pampering that she felt she deserved. First, Bella took her to the wet room and washed her in rosemary shampoo. Then Petula was massaged, rinsed, dried, clipped, polished, and groomed until she felt like a dog from the land of perfection. Lastly, she was taken to the salon spa room to relax. Here, she socialized with the dogs who had been booked into the dog hotel. There was a giant, silky Afghan hound who was very interested in what Petula had for yesterday's supper, a French bulldog with bat ears and no manners, who sniffed at her bottom with no invitation at all, and a silvery-coated Samoyed. I'm sorry. The Chow Chow, a sausage Dachshund, and a Chinese crested dog. I'm so fucking sorry. The small, hairless, gray and pink Chinese crested dog interested Petula the most. She had never met one before. He really had no hair, except for the tufty bit on the top of his head, and his ears were enormous and pointed. Petula liked his looks, and he certainly smelled nice, of parsley and clever thoughts. Petula laid down on a pink divan with him and made friends. For an hour, the two dogs communicated, as dogs do, sending thoughts and memories to each other telepathically. You know, as dogs do. Casually. The Chinese crested dog was staying at the dog hotel, as his owners were having an Oscars party with fireworks and lots of people in the house. Bella returned and took Petula back to the shop, where she picked out a collar encrusted with fake diamonds, which she fastened around her neck. The bell above the door rang, announcing another customer, and sensing that Molly needed her, Petula took this opportunity to slip out of the salon. Back at the Chateau Marmont, Petula found Molly still asleep. She was tangled tightly in the sheets, whimpering unhappily. Petula jumped onto the bed and snuggled close to comfort her. Molly was having a horrible nightmare in which she was at the Academy Awards in a cage on the stage. Primo Cell stood beside it, laughing as the audience threw dead magpies at her. Then the scene froze, and she was the only being alive in a still world where nothing would ever move again. Molly awoke to find she drooled all over the pillow. Her forehead was hot and clammy. Petula licked her face as Molly struggled to sit up. Then Molly grabbed the phone from the bedside table and dialed Lucy Logan's number. She could hear the phone ringing thousands of miles away in Lucy's little cottage. It rang on and on. She thought of Lucy's clocks ticking in accompaniment. The clocks. For the first time, Molly wondered about them. Surely Lucy knew something about time stopping. Why else would she collect clocks? Molly needed desperately to speak to her, but no one answered. She finally put the receiver down. Where was Lucy? Had something happened to her? Molly chewed her hand. Petula barked. Petula wagged her tail, but Molly still felt as if she was in a nightmare. She didn't want to think of the terrifying prospect of the Academy Awards, but she knew that as surely as land approaches a falling parachutist, the afternoon would come. And so it did. By 2 o'clock, Molly and Rocky were dressed. Rocky wore his smart black tuxedo and new black sneakers. Molly put on the outfit that she'd bought. It was an emerald green dress with green shoes that matched. Molly, you ought to do something about your hair. It looks like your hairdresser was a tornado, said Rocky. Molly wrestled her hair down. It's gone loony bin curly. You should look a bit more, well, Oscar-y, said Rocky. Do you think we'll get in? I mean, do we look like Star's kids? He tugged at his bow tie. I'm taking this off. It looks stupid, and anyway, I don't know how to tie it. We have to get in. Otherwise, dehypnotizing all these stars is going to take years. Molly picked up a piece of white card that she had been writing on and reread the instructions on it. I won't be much help getting in, said Rocky. Your eyes will have to get us past the door people. This card will get us in, or at least I hope it will. Silent hiccupy. You can help dehypnotize the stars inside, Rocky. We'll find a quiet place where you can work on them with your voice. Molly pulled out a list of Hollywood names from her dress pocket. How long did the Oscars last? 6 hours, Miss Trinkleberry said, replied Rocky. That's plenty of time to get lots of hits. We might be the ones that get hit. Petula trotted in. She was ready for an evening out and barked at Molly to show her that she was coming. Molly picked her up. You look much more starry than we do, she told Petula. Your coat is as shiny as your diamonds. The phone rang and Rocky answered it. Ready or not, the car's here. Oscars, here we come. In front of the hotel steps, a black limousine waited like a shiny-wheeled beast. A smart, gray-suited driver with dark glasses opened the car door, and Molly, Petula, and Rocky climbed in. No one noticed them going. Miss Trinkleberry was glued to her TV set, watching a pre-Academy Awards commentary program. Knockman was practicing opening his room safe without knowing its combination. Gemma and Gary were training Gary's mice to race along a cardboard track they'd made. Roger was busy up his tree, getting ready to spend the night there. The limousine coasted away from the hotel and drove toward Hollywood Boulevard. This had once been the most important movie and theater street in the world. Now it was more of a souvenir of the past, but it was still exciting, with the famous Grauman's Chinese Theater with its copper-green pagoda-style roof. Here the biggest stars in movie history had their footprints and handprints set forever in concrete. As they continued toward the Kodak Theater, venue of the Oscars, the traffic thickened. "Whoa, look at the people," their driver said, as they slowed to a crawling pace. Molly could see, through the darkened windows, policemen waving flags, urging on cars with gawping passengers and telling other cars to drop their loads quickly. Halfway up the street, there was a stationary glut of vehicles, and the sidewalks thronged with crowds who had come to catch a glimpse of their favorite celebrities. The limousine crept closer. "I bet you guys are excited about walking up that red carpet." Molly nodded vaguely. She was hoping that her legs would remember how to walk without tripping over each other. She felt sick. She thought of all the TV cameras and newspaper photographers waiting alongside the famous red carpet. "You don't think anyone will recognize me from Stars on Mars, do you?" she whispered to Rocky nervously. "It could really mess things up. I don't want anyone taking a picture of me while I'm hypnotizing the guards on the gates." "New York's on the other side of America, and you weren't on Broadway for that long," said Rocky uncertainly. "Oh, thank you, babe. Thanks for the bits." Picking nervously at his trousers. "If people recognize you from TV, they'll just think you're the nice girl from the charity commercial. That's all." Molly fell silent as they pulled up behind a shiny Lincoln. Their driver got out, eager to see for himself what was going on, and opened Molly's door. The challenge ahead made her stomach churn and her head dizzy. As she swallowed the lump of nerves that had lodged in her throat, she managed to "thank you" and stepped out of the car. Petula bounced after her. The noise of cheering and whistling filled the air. Molly was so shaky that the ground felt as if it was moving. The bits! The bits! Under her green shoes, bronze stars embedded in the sidewalk showed names of bygone movie icons. After 15 paces, and after pushing through a throng of people, Molly, Petula, and Rocky stepped into the cordoned-off area and onto the shore of a blood-red carpet that rolled like a river through the security gates. This carpet would take them through the fenced-off part of Hollywood Boulevard and into the Kodak Theater itself. There was no turning back now. Only people who had Oscar's invitations stepped onto the red carpet. Immediately, people were interested in who she and Rocky were. 1,000 cameras seemed to flash. The carpet turned into a blur as Molly walked along it. "Are they actors?" she heard someone ask. Ahead were the gates, low arches covered with flowers. As Molly saw guests pass through them, giving their bags to be put through the X-ray machines, she realized that the arches were camouflaged metal detectors to check for hidden weapons or explosives. "High security," said Rocky. "Hope it's not so high that I can't hypnotize them." "Hey!" muttered Molly, clutching her white card. For luck, she touched her diamond, hidden under the top of her dress. Behind them, someone extremely famous arrived. The crowds began yelling and screaming. This was good. It gave Molly a chance to work without people watching her. Molly gritted her teeth, turned her eyes to full glare, and prepared to floor one of the gatekeepers. Her hypnotism would have to work swiftly, without anyone else being aware of it. The man on this particular gate was tough and professional. Molly didn't look him in the eye until she was right in front of him. When she did, her hypnotism was like a wallop in the face. "Look at my invitation," Molly said quietly, and of course the man did. It read, "This is a genuine Academy Awards invitation. Let me, my friend, and my dog through without any trouble. Behave normally. Forget us once we are in." The man nodded, and he saw exactly what he expected to see. A fancy invitation with curly gold embossed letters on it, and with the picture of the gold Oscar statuette at the top. He ushered Molly, Petula, and Rocky through the metal detector. Then Molly gave the invitation to Rocky, who folded it and put it in his pocket. They were in. Hollywood Boulevard lay ahead of them, flanked by tall palm trees and completely covered with red carpet. The road looked like a calm, flat, red lake, and on it stood hundreds of people, mostly stars Molly recognized, who looked like gods walking on water. They were all dressed impeccably in the most spectacular, most expensive evening clothes that money can buy. The men wore mostly black silk or velvet or fine weave suits. The women were in gorgeous gowns from the world's most exclusive designers. Some were in flimsy short dresses, but a lot were in long ones. And because Molly couldn't see their feet, they looked as if they were gliding, like multicolored swans, on the red lake. Behind brass barriers were tiered platforms, or bleachers, on which stood hundreds of lucky people who had won standing room tickets to watch the glitterati of the film world arrive. "Oh no," said Molly. "Look at the cameras." Arching over the boulevard was a bridge. On this stood banks of photographers. Stars waved up at them and smiled professionally. Alongside the carpet stood TV cameras and interviewers holding microphones. The stars posed and smiled, knowing that the whole world was watching. Enormous lenses pointed left and right, and even though it was still broad daylight, the air prickled non-stop with electronic flashes. "Hey," said Rocky happily, "so this is what it feels like to be a star." Molly had experienced the world of stardom for a few brief weeks in New York, but she felt very out of practice and was much more unsure of herself than Rocky. The feeling that gnawed at her the most was the fear that someone would put a hand on her shoulder and shout, "Hey, you aren't supposed to be here. You can stop right now. Turn around and get out." "Rocky, do you think anyone will realize we're not supposed to be here?" "Only if you talk like that," said Rocky, smiling at a camera. There'll be lip readers watching this on TV. Miles away in Oklahoma, a deaf boy called Ben was watching the Oscars on TV. He always enjoyed reading the lips of people on television. Being able to lip read was one of the good parts about being deaf. Television was much more interesting. For instance, he knew the president and his wife very well because he lip read what they said to each other when they were away from the microphones. Tonight, he watched as a film director being interviewed. He noticed a couple of kids standing close behind. He saw them speak. "Just enjoy this, Molly. No one knows you weren't invited. I've already persuaded myself that I was," said the good-looking black boy who, Ben thought, did look like a young star. Beside him, the girl in the green dress with the messy hair said, "You're right. This is too good to worry about, but let's get into the theater as soon as we can." Go for it, thought Ben, wishing he could be with the kids on TV too. Cameras flashed constantly. White, bright light bounced off pearly sets of teeth that smiled super perfect Hollywood smiles. It sparkled on diamond necklaces, platinum bracelets, and gold cufflinks. Petula's new collar shone, and so did Petula. She loved all the energy and excitement in the air. Molly glanced around at the famous faces. Right away she saw 5 or 6 of the celebrities whose names were on her list, Primo Cell's victims. There was Stephanie Goulash in a dark blue see-through dress, her piled up hair red as flames. A few steps away, Cosmo Ace, in a silver suit, was talking to a TV journalist. Molly could see Hercules Stone, dressed in a white tuxedo, stepping through the throng with a beautiful Chinese woman on his arm. Then she saw something that made her insides jump. A few feet away from her, a short woman in a dark suit was studying Molly. Her microphone had a large shield on it that read, "The New York Reporter." Molly recognized her as the arts correspondent of New York's biggest newspaper. She had interviewed Molly when she performed in Stars on Mars. Molly pulled Rocky away, but it was too late. "Hey, excuse me, Molly Moon," the journalist cried excitedly. The heads of nearby cameramen swiveled in Molly's direction. "Molly, what a lovely surprise to see you here, and Petula too. People have been wondering when you'd be back." Molly's past had caught up with her, and there was no escape. "So have you and Petula recovered from her kidnapping?" the woman questioned. Yes, thank you," said Molly, trying to avoid a large lens that had zoomed in on her. Petula looked up at it and barked happily. "And is your appearance here a sign that you'll be coming back to the stage, or maybe even to the screen instead?" Molly tried not to look flustered. No," she said. "I'm just here to spend some time with a friend. Thank you. I have to go." This is the friend who made the commercial with you? The one about checking out the kids in your neighborhood? Pushed the journalist. Yes, I am, said Rocky. Nice to meet you. Rocky smiled at the camera and would have happily given an interview, but Molly stepped on his toe and gave him a don't you dare look. As Molly tugged Rocky away, she heard the journalist say, As usual, Molly Moon is as mysterious as ever, but it's great to see her back. Perhaps a film career is in the cards. Molly led Rocky deep into the crowd. Ugh, she said, that was scary. These newspaper people have really good memories. Then she noticed that Petula hadn't kept up with him. Oh no, Petula's got stuck back there, Molly said, looking worriedly over her shoulder. I hope she's all right. Molly needn't have worried. Petula was having the time of her life. She loved the limelight when she was in New York. It felt good to be bathing in it again. She turned her face this way and that for the cameras. She stood on her hind legs and begged. She hopped around in circles. The photographers loved her. Then she gave a foxy bark and trotted off to find Molly. On the way, she passed a tall, velvet-clad man with a deep tan and black hair pulled back in a ponytail. Petula paused. He smelled like someone she'd met before, who had been behind the camera at some TV studios in New York. Although Petula didn't know it, the man who smiled down at her was in fact a top Hollywood director. He was an Italian called Gino Pucci. His latest movie, Blood of a Stranger, was nominated for Best Picture tonight. Petula liked his smell. She stood up and put her paws on his leg, and as he bent down to talk to her, she sought him one of her most charming expressions. It was a devastating look. Gino was too stunned to say anything. Petula barked seductively and then trotted off. Molly and Rocky were now standing near a heavy stone arch, the entrance to the Kodak building. A giant golden Oscar statue, almost as high as the arch itself, stood like an ancient idol, as if the Kodak Theater was a temple to worship stars in. Wow, said Rocky, laughing quietly. There are so many actors here that I feel like I'm in a film. Molly was struck by how many of the actors were smaller than she'd imagined. Watching them on big movie screens had made her think they were superhuman size. In fact, a lot of them were short. Up close, the stars were all so human. There was one scratching his nose, another one scratching her ear. Molly was surprised by the ordinariness of them all. It's funny, isn't it? Said Molly. We know all their faces so well, but they don't know ours at all. At least I hope they don't. For a few minutes, Molly and Rocky absorbed the scene, knowing that it was something they'd remember all their lives. Okay, said Molly, enough of this starstruck stuff. Let's get inside. Petula had caught up, and the three of them hurried ahead. Inside the covered forecourt of the Kodak was cooler and quieter. Cameras weren't allowed in here, and it was less crowded. The wide passage before them, which was normally a shopping promenade, was decorated with flowers, and its walls were hung with piped red curtains. A grand, red-carpeted staircase, like an enormous red tongue, led to the theater entrance. Groups of celebrities were standing about, greeting each other, and star-spotting other celebrities. A sudden hush fell, as none other than Gloria Heelhart came through the door. She was accompanied by a distinguished-looking old man. The waiting crowd tensed with admiration. Gloria Heelhart was such a huge star that everyone watching felt they were tiny sparks compared to her. Tonight she was dressed in what looked like a golden coil. It was shiny silk sewn onto spaghetti-thin tubes that had been coiled and stitched together into a shimmering dress that clung to every inch of her famous body. Her swan-like neck was strangled in a real golden coil, so it looked like an expensive spring joined her head to her shoulders. The same coils were on her upper arms. Her oriental eyes were as beautiful and mysterious as ever. A few people greeted her with polite good evenings, while others looked on in silent respect, wishing that they knew her too. Gloria Heelhart smiled her glorious smile and stepped past, raising her bejeweled fingers in a gracious wave. Molly, staring at the spectacular golden curves stalking majestically across the foyer, thought how incredible it was that the Queen of Hollywood could have ever been caught in Primo Cel's net. She seemed so dignified, but really she was as helpless as a slave. "This is the perfect place," said Molly. "But how are we going to nail them?" whispered Rocky. "We can't just walk up and hypnotize them in front of everyone. Besides, Sel is bound to be here somewhere." Molly looked around nervously. This was an extremely disturbing thought, one that she had not dwelt on before. The idea that Primo Sel was there felt as scary as seeing a tiger on the loose. "We have to find somewhere quiet." Then her eyes brightened. "I know where." "Where is my friend? You mean my girlfriend?" She's not here for this stream." Hang on. I gotta scratch again. It's very important. My voice made you sleepy. I know. I have a feeling that's why chat is so quiet. "But Molly, I can't just loiter in the gents," Rocky complained. "There aren't many cubicles, you know. Everything that happens is right there in front of you, if you see what I mean. Can't I come with you and Petula?" "Shh, Rocky, of course you can't. Look, this idea is good. The toilets are probably nice and quiet. You can at least have a go at dehypnotizing some male stars. I'll cover the ladies' room. But I'm not as good as you. I need to talk for quite a while for my voice to have an effect." "Rocky, have a go, please. You're really charming. You can ask them lots of long questions about themselves." "You might have been napping." I believe it. Reluctantly, Rocky set off for the men's room on the other side of the foyer. Molly and Petula went into the ladies' powder room. It was very brightly lit. A white-tiled circular chamber with basins and mirrors led to a long, thin corridor lined with silver cubicles that housed the toilets. A few women were touching up their makeup. They didn't notice Molly, who sat herself on a stool by the door, or Petula, who perched politely under the dressing table ledge. Molly knew that sooner or later some of the stars on her list would come into the room, and when they did, she would be ready for them. The bathroom attendant came out of a cubicle where she had been arranging the roll of toilet paper so that its loose end was folded into a neat triangle. She was dressed in a starched striping uniform with a small white apron, and her fair hair was carefully coiffured in tight curls. She was a big woman who could eat 2 tubs of ice cream in one sitting. But tonight she was too tense and excited to eat anything. This was the greatest night in her 40-year career as a Los Angeles bathroom attendant. She was enormously proud to be wiping toilet seats after famous bottoms had sat on them. Whenever a guest came out of a cubicle, she shot in after them to clean and polish. She was so obviously enjoying her work that Molly felt it was a shame to stop her, but the hypnotizing had to be done, and Molly got to work. She was soon in command of the attendant. "You won't notice me hypnotizing people," Molly whispered. "You will simply ignore me and get on with your work. After I've gone, you'll forget I was here." The cleaner nodded. "What's your name?" "Brenda Cartwright," said the woman slowly. "Well, Brenda, after tonight you will feel that you did the best job you possibly could and everyone loved you. Don't be nervous. Enjoy it." Brenda nodded, smiled dreamily, and floated off, humming a song from the musical Hello, Dolly. To Molly's surprise and delight, the next person to come into the powder room was Suki Champagne. Now she could get down to business. Miss Champagne was dressed in an extraordinary mermaid outfit. It was green and silver, with velvety sea flowers dangling from it. It had small teardrop shapes of net all over it, a halter neck, a very low front, and a circular gap at stomach level revealing Suki's emerald-studded belly button. The skirt of the dress narrowed so tightly at the knees that her legs could only take teeny tiny steps. Then it flowed into a train, making it look as if she was dragging a swath of seaweed behind her. She leaned toward the mirror and took a lipstick from her evening bag. She gave herself a special look, as if the breeze from a breaking wave had just caught her by surprise and made her take a sharp intake of breath. Satisfied with her beauty, she touched her curtain of hair. That's when she saw Molly's reflected green eyes looking at her. In a few seconds, Suki Champagne's mouth was hanging open, and her lipstick had dropped into the basin. "Now," said Molly, talking as quickly as possible, "you are under my power. Completely, utterly, all of that. The powder room door swung open again. Molly sucked in a breath and sank back as Gloria Heelheart swayed past her, moving rather like an eel in her golden coils. Seeing Suki Champagne, but not pausing to look at her, Gloria Heelheart headed for her own mirror. "Suki, darling, congratulations," she drawled. "Congratulations on being a nominee. What a very special night for you." Molly watched as Gloria opened her golden evening bag and pulled out a picture of some Pekingese dog, which she kissed. Suki Champagne, still in her trance, stared at herself in the mirror as if she'd had her brain removed. "Are you all right?" asked the Queen of Hollywood, frowning, although she couldn't really because she'd had so many anti-frown Botox injections in her forehead. She dabbed at her wide mouth with scarlet lipstick. "You don't seem all there, darling." Suki's mouth popped out of the corner of her mouth. Quickly, Molly tapped Gloria Heelheart on the shoulder. "She told me she's feeling wonderful. Are you getting an award tonight?" she asked. Gloria turned imperiously to see who dared to speak to her, and as Molly's eyes met the famous actress's, Molly zapped her too. Gloria Heelheart stood like a drugged animal. Her pogo stick neck drooped and she dropped her clutch bag. "Right," said Molly, eyeing the door and hoping that no more Hollywood creatures would enter. "You are both entirely under my power. I want you to do something for me." The two nodded. "Think about Primo Cell," she said. "He hypnotized you, didn't he?" Both women nodded. Molly's heart jolted with excitement. "I want you to remember what Primo Cell ordered you to do." Again, there were nods. "Okay, I have power over and above Primo Cell's, and I now order you to forget all of Primo Cell's orders. You must erase his instructions from your minds. From this day on, you are free to do as you please. You will never again obey Primo Cell. In fact, you won't go near him." She paused. Gloria Heelheart and Suki Champagne were shaking their magnificent heads of hair. "Cannot," said Gloria in a monotone. "I cannot obey," echoed Suki. "You will," said Molly sternly, feeling like a schoolmistress dealing with disobedient pupils. "I won't have any of this nonsense." She had to sort these actresses out before anyone else came in. She turned up the force of her eye glare until Gloria Heelheart's head began to twitch, and Suki Champagne's body began to sink to the ground, her stiletto shoes twisting beneath her. Petula whined. Molly really didn't like to see them like this, but it couldn't be helped. "Tell me what Primo has ordered you to do," she ordered Gloria. "Top secret," stated the Queen of Hollywood. "Listen, Gloria," said Molly, astonished and worried that none of her instructions were working. "If you know what's good for you, you will tell me now." "I cannot tell you anything," croaked Gloria, starting to quake. "It is impossible." Both stars were resisting Molly's pressure. Normally people submitted quickly to this sort of hypnotic power. Sol had hypnotized them so completely that even Molly's strongest efforts couldn't free them. How had he done it? "All right," she said, giving up and wanting to put the pair into a more dignified state. "In a minute, when I click my fingers, you will forget that you have been in a trance, and you will continue as usual." At that moment, Molly saw an irresistible opportunity staring her in the face. Even though she couldn't break Primo Cell's hold on them, Molly could still change these people's lives, or ask them to do anything for her. Why, she could make them invite her and Rocky to their houses for lunch. She could ask them to insist that she, Molly, star with them in their next movies. She could tell Suki Champagne to campaign to help save the rainforest. Instead, hearing Brenda Cartwright humming happily, and in a sudden gesture of generosity, Molly said, "Suki and Gloria, you will both notice tonight how brilliant the bathroom attendant, Brenda Cartwright, is. In fact, you'll write to her afterward and tell her your evening wouldn't have been the same without her amazing work. You will even invite her over for tea. You will both feel that she is the most memorable thing about the Oscars. Now, whenever I say, powder puff, you will both be under my power. My power, again." Molly clicked her fingers once more, and both women came around. "I said, are you all right?" repeated Gloria Heelheart, picking up where she had left off. "Of course. You know I'm a nominee tonight for my role in Blood of a Stranger." "Yes, darling. I just congratulated you." "Did you?" Suki Champagne couldn't understand how she hadn't heard Gloria's greeting. Then she let out a strange low cry. the sort of noise a moose burping might make. Oh no, I dropped my lipstick and it snapped off. That's a bad omen. Willowmana Drakesland created that lipstick color for me. See, it matches the water flowers on my dress perfectly. Oh, heavens above, I don't think I'll win that Oscar now. Gloria Heelheart wasn't listening. As she'd bent to pick up her bag, she caught sight of Petula. Oh, what a cute dog, she drawled. Is she yours? She asked Molly. I'm not usually partial to pugs. I'm a Pekingese person. But what a wonderful dog. She bent down, cupped Petula's head in her hands, and kissed her nose. Petula was quite overwhelmed by her perfume, and very glad when Brenda Cartwright came out of a cubicle and Gloria's attention was diverted. Brenda, darling, Gloria enthused, you've done the most marvelous job tonight. You should be getting an award. Brenda was too overwhelmed to speak. After a few more pats of Petula, more thank yous to Brenda for her fine work, and several squirts of perfume, the two actresses were gone. Molly sank onto her stool. She couldn't understand why she hadn't been able to dehypnotize the two stars. In the book of hypnotism, there had been nothing about hypnosis that couldn't be undone. Molly thought everyone who was ever hypnotized could always be released. Somehow, Sel had locked his hypnosis in permanently, just as Lucy Logan had guessed. Molly didn't know how he'd done it. She felt as if she was facing a solid steel door fastened with an iron padlock, and she didn't have a key. She began to see the true extent of Sel's power. If he could keep them under his control for as long as he wanted, he was invincible. This thought was very frightening. He'd get more and more powerful and richer, and he'd control more and more people all over America, all over the world probably. Primo Sel knew mountains more about hypnotism than Molly did, and he was probably in the building right now. Molly felt scared. I have to sneeze. We're good. Outside, Molly heard a loudspeaker call people to their seats in the auditorium. A few more people hurried into the powder room to use it before the ceremony began. Molly decided not to give up hope. Maybe other Sel victims would walk into her web, others who perhaps weren't so severely hypnotized. She must try to learn more about what had happened to them. But as the evening wore on, her hopes were dashed. Molly met major and minor film stars, as well as 3 directors, 4 producers, 5 screenwriters, a camerawoman, and a costume designer. She found that the more famous the women were, the more likely they were to have been hypnotized by Sel. He had hypnotized 2 of the directors and a producer. Again, all of his instructions to them were firm and unmovable. The evening purred by for the Academy Awards audience. They watched clips of the year's best films. Oscar after Oscar was awarded. Thrilled and emotional people stepped up to collect them. Petula whined, wishing that she could go and watch. Eventually, there was a tap on the powder room door. It was Rocky. He was very disgruntled. Everyone who'd come into the men's room had been in too much of a rush to talk to him. It's been really embarrassing, he said crossly. Molly told him what she'd discovered. But how's it done? Rocky asked. I don't know. It's like he sealed it inside them, screwed the lid on it. It's weird. It's dangerous. I've had enough, said Molly. Let's go home. To Petula's delight, they ventured out into the empty foyer. There they could hear the muffled hum of the people inside the theater. Molly and Rocky decided that they had to take a quick look before they left. Silently, they slipped inside and hid behind a curtain at the dark edge of the auditorium. The place was enormous, like a cavernous red mouth lined with tooth-like seats. On these teeth sat hundreds of people in their tuxedos and gowns and jewels, watching, listening, applauding, and enjoying themselves. From the sides of the auditorium, swooping cameras on metal arms scanned the audience. They were filming the celebrities for their reactions as each winner was announced. Every star was aware of the millions of people watching all over the world. The ceremony had reached the award for Best Actress in a Leading Role. The giant screen showed a clip of Tanya Toyele starring in Into the Wilderness, and then it split into 5. The live camera zoomed in on the 5 actresses nominated for this Oscar, and their expectant faces, 6 feet high, loomed over the stage. Suki Champagne was, of course, one of them. The presenter of the award, a Spanish actress in a winged dress that looked as if it was about to take off, held the sealed Oscar envelope. She tore it open, pulled out the card inside. The audience held its breath, and she announced, "And the winner okay. is Suki Champagne for Blood of a Stranger." There was a shriek from the auditorium as Suki realized she had won. On the screen, the 4 other actresses tried to hide their disappointment. The audience clapped wildly. Trembling, Suki stood up. She kissed the people beside her, her sister, and the director of the film, Gino Pucci, gathered up in her mermaid gown, and tried to glide gracefully down the aisle. When she reached the stage, she put her hand over her mouth in astonishment. All her life, she'd fantasized about this moment, and now she could hardly think straight. Well done, congratulated the Spanish actress, thrusting the golden Oscar into her hands and pushing her toward the microphone. Suki Champagne felt the cameras on her face. She smiled, aware her parted lips were on millions of TV screens around the world. Back at Chateau Marmont, Miss Trinkleberry was weeping with joy at Suki Champagne's victory. "She deserves every inch of that little statue," said Miss Trinkleberry. "Oh, what a wonderful day for her. I expect her mother's so proud." "Maybe she's an orphan," said Gemma. "I wonder what she'll say," said Miss Trinkleberry. "She looks awfully nervous." On the television, Suki's small face looked as if she was waiting for the applause to subside. In fact, she was desperately trying to remember the speech she had prepared. The shock of winning had emptied everything from her head. Miss Trinkleberry dabbed at her eyes. "Thank you," began Miss Suki Champagne, combing her brain to find her lost speech. At last she found it. "Yes," she sighed, "I want to thank everyone who made this film possible for me. It was a fabulous experience, and without you all I wouldn't be up here today. So thank you. But most of all, my thanks are due to the marvelous Brenda Cartwright, who is here tonight. She keeps the Kodak Theater powder room so perfectly that I could have spent the whole evening in it. I've never seen such beautifully polished toilet seats. Yes, Brenda, thank you. You've made my evening a complete pleasure." "What a lovely girl," said Miss Trinkleberry. The audience wondered whether or not to laugh, and some of them did. Others sympathized with Suki Champagne. They knew that she must be deeply moved by her victory, so they began to clap. A few directors marked Miss Champagne down as a much more eccentric and interesting actress than they had thought. Suki Champagne smiled bewilderedly and left the stage. Rocky looked sideways at Molly. "Strange behavior. Don't suppose it had anything to do with you?" "I didn't mean her to say that," said Molly guiltily. From behind their curtain, Molly, Petula, and Rocky watched the ceremony roll by. At last it was all over, and excited, babbling crowds poured out to fill the foyer and the corridors. Jostled this way and that, Molly caught the edge of a conversation about the Davina Natel abduction. "Do you think it's a kidnapping? I mean, why hasn't the Natel family received a ransom demand?" one man asked. "All I know," his companion replied, "is that I've hired a bodyguard to accompany my children to school. I'm not letting them go out by themselves anymore." Molly and Rocky suddenly felt that they should have left earlier. To avoid the cameras, they decided to leave through the caterer's entrance. It was then that a hand tapped Molly on the shoulder. She swung around. The tall, commanding figure of a gray-haired man towered over her. Molly lurched sideways, and she just managed to stifle a scream. Primo Cell smiled. "I'm so sorry to make you jump," he said. Molly tried to wipe the horror off her face. Cell was looking straight at her. Molly recognized his eyes with their different colors. One was turquoise, the other was a strange shade of brown. "Glad to catch you," he said in a warm, friendly voice. "You're Molly Moon, aren't you? My name's Primo Cell. My son Sinclair here has been telling me all about your shooting star time in New York. Apparently you're the star of the 21st century." Behind Cell, Molly could see Sinclair. He was fair-haired, blue-eyed, fit and tanned. Molly knew instantly that Sinclair was the same man who'd walked into Cell's office the night they'd hidden under the desk. She stepped in front of Petula to hide her. "It's a treat to meet you," Primo Cell contrived. "I'm always interested in young stars." His voice was fluid and smooth, as if his voice box, tongue, and teeth were all lubricated with liquid silicone. Primo offered his well-manicured hand for her to shake. She didn't take it. Molly's hesitation looked to Primo like reserve. He said, "Oh, of course. You have no idea who I am, do you?" Pretending, Molly shook her head. His voice was horribly alluring. She must stop listening to it as soon as she could. "Nice to meet you," Molly mumbled, and began to turn away. Primo wasn't deterred. This budding starlet had probably been warned that Hollywood was a shark tank and that everyone would want a bite of her. "I'd really like to know you better," he purred. "Molly, I'm hosting the hottest party in Hollywood tonight. Everyone will be there. It's the place to be. I'd love it if you and your friend would be my guests." Sel handed Molly 2 black invitations with gold magpies on them. "Hope to see you there." Primo Sel smiled once more, and he and Sinclair disappeared into the noisy crowd. Molly and Rocky looked at their invitations. Neither of them spoke. Molly eventually broke the silence. "We only have to go for a while." "We don't have to go at all," said Rocky. "Did you see the way he looked at you?" "We should go," insisted Molly, her mind already made up. "Think about it. It'll give us the perfect chance to find out more about him. We've got to find out how he does his unstoppable hypnosis. Maybe something at the house will show us how. He's probably got a special hypnotizing room that will give us some clues. And if Sel did take Davina, maybe she's locked in an attic or something. Rocky, I know it feels a little like walking into the lion's den, but we've got to go." "Hi, Maple." They just met the bad guy, face to face. "Molly, thinking we can safely snoop around Sel's house is like thinking it's safe to play in a power station without getting electrocuted." "No," said Molly, picking Petula up, "because we're not going to play. We're going there to turn the power off." Molly and Rocky were a bit stumped as to how they would get to Primo Sel's. Their driver had gone, and they realized getting a cab outside the Kodak building would be tricky, as there were throngs of people there. So when they spotted a long-legged actor in a denim suit with a magpie invitation in his sun-tanned hand, they politely asked if they could hitch a lift. Molly recognized him from old cowboy films in the video cupboard at Happiness House. His name was Dusty Goldman. "As long as you don't mind traveling rough, I'd love to take you. My car's parked out back," he said, a grin wrinkling his weathered face. Pleased to meet someone who seemed real and not caring how rough his car was, Molly and Rocky followed Dusty Goldman toward the rear exit of the Kodak Theater. "I'm surprised you recognized me," he said modestly. "I haven't made a big film for years." "Why were you at the awards?" asked Rocky. "An old friend of mine directed a movie that got nominated for Best Soundtrack, and her husband couldn't go, caught some sort of bug, so she offered me his ticket and the party invitation. Thought I'd go for old time's sake." Outside the theater's service entrance, the sun had gone down and it was getting cold. Dusty led Molly, Petula, and Rocky to a beat-up convertible. It was rusty, dented, and muddy. "Why don't more people leave by the back entrance?" asked Molly. "There aren't any crowds here." "Well, precisely. People like to be seen, especially by cameras," said Dusty. "The more times their picture gets published, the more famous they get. The more famous they get, the more cameras want to take their picture. It's a spiral that goes around, and most of them want to ride it. They want to get higher on that spiral than anyone else ever got before, higher than Marilyn Monroe or Elvis. They want to become gods for the people. That's why not many leave out back." He climbed into the front seat of his unlocked car. "I'm not saying that lots of the people here aren't real talented. There are real good actors and world-class directors, but a lot of them get sucked into this ugly spiral thing." Molly and Rocky liked Dusty. He had his feet on the ground and his head screwed on. They hopped into his Thunderbird, slipping into its worn-out leather seats. Dusty took the battered wheel in his left hand and twisted the ignition with his right, and with a few shifts of the gear stick and a growl from the engine, they were off. It was refreshing, but cold to be driving in an open-topped car. Dusty gave Molly a jacket to wrap around herself. Petula sat on her lap, licking at the breeze. They drove back along Hollywood Boulevard and picked up speed as they coasted through West Hollywood, the bright lights of restaurants, hotels, and bars flashing past them. Petula's ears flapped in the wind. "You like music?" "Love it," said Rocky. Dusty switched on a country and western radio station. "Do you play anything?" "Guitar," said Rocky. "Have you ever been in there?" Molly asked as they passed the Beverly Hills Hotel. "Yeah, it's very expensive. All gold and pink and full of cushions. It's like the inside of a tissue box in there." He concentrated on the road. Ah, see up there? That's Primo. That's Primo Cell's mansion, all lit up. Molly recognized Cell's home from Lucy's photographs. It was high up on the hill, huge and set in a cedar-filled park. Its gray stone walls and gardens were illuminated with silvery spotlights. As they drove upward, less and less of the grounds was visible, until eventually all they could see was the high wall that surrounded the mansion. Dusty drove up to the imposing gate, turned off his music, and flashed through invitations at the security guards. "Never been here before," he commented. "Neither have we." Molly hoped her rash decision had not been unwise. Dusty followed a line of other cars up the long winding drive, past the cedar trees and small lakes with colored lights under the water. The undulating lawns were dotted with monster-sized sculptures of jagged steel beasts that looked as if they were grazing under the full moon. Here and there, small lights moved about on the grass. "An art lover. I suppose there will be quite a collection inside." "So," said Dusty dryly, "even if the people aren't interesting, maybe the stuff covering the walls will be. And by looking at our host's art, we will be able to see what he's like." The drive rolled into a graveled area above and behind the main building, where a parking attendant directed Dusty to a space by a wall. In the middle of the parking lot, a large stone magpie, poised for flight, was set in the center of a fountain. Water sprayed out of its wingtips. Molly got out of the car and drank in the view. Below them were the roofs, chimneys, and top-floor windows of Primo Cell's house. Beyond, the vast expanse of Los Angeles spread out like an eiderdown of millions of Christmas lights, some in neat rows, others in hodgepodge of color and winking neon. "I've heard about this view. The city looks like a computer circuit board from here, don't it?" said Dusty as they made their way down the stone steps that led to the back of the house. Ornamental rose gardens were laid out to the left and right, each the home of more steel sculptures. A peacock ruffled up its feathers as Petula walked past. At the bottom of the steps, there was a Japanese water garden with blossoming trees. Fragrant purple wisteria hung in clumps from a curving wooden footbridge. In the pond below, a huge orange and white mottled fish swam beneath the lily pads. "Chinese carp," Dusty pointed out as they crossed the bridge. Molly realized that this was the first time she had ever been to a really rich person's house. Molly thought how extraordinary it must be to come home to a place like this every day. They passed under an arch and came to a circular cobbled courtyard, where a sculpture of an egg surprised them by suddenly shooting a shaft of orange flame out of its top. All right. Ahead was an ornately carved door. Here, another security guard checked their invitations. Then, Molly, Petula, and Rocky followed Dusty into a tall lobby. They found themselves looking over a balustrade into a large hall. A huge flight of oak stairs led down to a patterned marble floor that looked as if someone had spilled jugs of coffee on it. Jazzy music floated out from a room beyond. Everywhere was busy with waiters and waitresses hurrying in and out of rooms with trays and glasses of food. Trays of glasses and food. "Let's go out front," said Dusty, and he led them into Primo Cell's drawing room. The huge space, now filled up with guests, had been emptied of furniture for the party. A colossal chandelier with crystal pieces dripping from it like 1,000 dewdrops hung from the center of the ceiling. A 4-piece band was playing "I've Got You Under My Skin." Dusty did a funny wiggly dance as they walked past the musicians. As they emerged onto a terrace the size of a tennis court, a voice shrilled, "Hey Dusty, you made it!" A tall, beautiful Arab woman in red gauze dress threw her arms around the old film star's neck. "Have a great evening. Nice meeting you," Dusty said, winking at Molly and Rocky as he turned to join his director friend. Molly and Rocky were offered fruit punch by the waiter. Petula ate an olive that she found on the floor. Then she began sucking on its pit. Molly stared up at Primo Cell's house. It had 4 floors. Looking in through the windows of the ground floor rooms, She could see people celebrating, holding flutes of champagne and triangular cocktail glasses. Gloria Heelhart was hugging Gino Pucci, Hercules Stone was admiring Suki Champagne's Oscar, and Stephanie Goulash was greeting King Moose with a kiss. Even the politician Gandoli, whom Molly recognized from election campaign posters around town, was there. Gossip, laughter, and excitement filled the night air. People basked in the satisfaction of knowing this was the best party in Hollywood tonight. Many of them were working the rooms, making sure that they talked to the most important people. Actors were trying to charm directors were flattering producers were seeking out stars who they thought could make their next film a box office hit. But Molly was thinking how lucky it was that they had found their way here on a night like this. Downstairs, the mansion might be buzzing with noise and movement, but behind the windows of the upstairs rooms were no signs of activity. Nice and quiet, she thought, for a little exploring. Molly and Rocky finished their fruit punches and returned to the coffee-splattered marble hall. The oak staircase they had come down was flooded with noisy people, and 2 security guards were standing on the landing at the top. Molly and Rocky decided to look downstairs first. Squeezing between a woman in a gold caftan who was as wide as a cow and a fat man with a white mustache, they entered an emptier room. It was full of modern art and lit by a large steel and glass chandelier. Remember what Dusty said, Rocky reminded Molly. By looking at Sel's art, we'll be able to see what he's like. To the left was a very weird green and gray picture of lots of tiny people the size of mice, wearing nothing except leashes, being pulled along by an organ grinder's monkey that was also on a leash. Opposite was a portrait of Sel himself, so huge that its canvas completely hid the wall. His eyes, one brown, one turquoise, showed the reflection of a flying magpie in their pupils. Alright, that's some interesting art. I wonder where he is right now, whispered Molly, as a waiter approached them with a tray. On it was an artistic arrangement of what looked like fried crabs in a bowl of black sauce. What is it? Molly asked. Soft-shell crab, replied the waiter. When he saw Molly's puzzled look, he added, You can eat them whole. They're a special kind of crab. No thanks, Molly said. Rocky took one. Crunchy, he pronounced. Rocky was now too excited by the party to find the thought of Sel scary. I shouldn't think he's that interested in us. He's got much bigger fish to fry. I don't want to be fried at all, said Molly, looking at the soft-shell crabs as they went by again. Molly, Petula, and Rocky began to weave, unnoticed, through the increasingly animated guests in search of Sel's private rooms. They followed the marble hall to its end and opened a door that led to a conservatory. Thick jungle foliage climbed pillars that sheltered hundreds of blooming orchids, and the air smelled moist and sweet. At one end was an indoor fountain where 3 people were playing guitars and singing. There was a tall, thin teenage boy with a large nose and shaggy hair, and a girl of about 16 with an urchin haircut and one eyebrow with a section cut out of it. The other one, to Molly and Rocky's amazement, was Billy Bob Bimble. They stopped to listen. If I get another cat, I want to name him Billy Bob Bimble. Molly could see Rocky was desperate to pick up a guitar and join in, but she glared at him to remind them of their more important mission. Rocky began to hum along. Cool, man, the shaggy one said, nodding his head and shutting his eyes as he played. Then Rocky began to talk in time to the music. Molly was impressed. He was making up words as he went along and sounded really good. But when he gave her a signal, she walked away with Petula, right to the other end of the conservatory. Molly didn't want to be hypnotized by Rocky. She waited for a few minutes, and when she came back, she found the 3 guitar players staring fixatedly at them. Cool, said the shaggy one. They were all in trances. Molly gave each of them an extra eye glare. Then she asked them whether they'd been hypnotized by Sel. They had. On her instruction to forget all his instructions, the girl with the eyebrow said, "No way, ma'am. What Primo says sticks." "Yeah," said Billy Bob Bimble. "Primo's cool. Gotta write a song about him." "You already have, haven't you? Your Magpie song is about him," said Molly, thinking of the tune that had been played on radios all over the world. "No, man. That track is about a woman who's gonna have her heart broken. It's a love song." Molly realized that, on the surface, Bimble was I just said bimbo. Bimble was oblivious to Primo Cell's true self, but deep down inside he must, she thought, understand the kind of man Cell was. His song showed that. "Sing the Magpie song," she said. Billy Bob's caramel-coated voice rang out. "Don't let him steal your heart. Steal it. Steal your heart. Ooh. Don't let him have your heart. Guard it from the start. Ooh. Steal your heart, Magpie man. Ooh." "Once the sun and the stars and you. Ooh, Magpie man." You're welcome. "Where did Cell hypnotize you?" "In the movie room," said Billy Bob Bimble. "Where's that?" "Downstairs." He pointed to some stairs at the far end of the conservatory. "Outside the croquet garden," said Shaggy Hair. The girl nodded. Molly instructed them to not remember meeting Rocky or her and released the musicians from their trance. Then they left them to their strumming and went to find the movie room. It was a fabulous private cinema cum theater, with armchair-sized reclining seats. Plush silk curtains were drawn back from a huge screen on which two very fast Ferraris were chasing each other along a cliff-top road. A young man with a serious face was showing a film he had made to an old producer. Reluctantly, Molly and Rocky returned the way they had come. "We won't be able to find any clues in there," said Molly. "Wish we could just party and watch movies all night," Rocky said as they made their way outside again. Beside a small croquet lawn surrounded by outdoor heaters, they found Tony Wham, the karate star, and two other famous actors from big TV soap operas. They were talking about fan mail. Petula sniffed at their trousers. Molly went to eavesdrop on two women who were sitting talking under a lemon tree. An old actress was giving a pretty young girl some advice. "To be frank, dear, you should have your cheekbones enhanced. They'd just put a bit of extra bone under the skin. It would make all the difference to your face. And a few nice Botox injections in your forehead would be good, because then you could say goodbye to those nasty frown lines that you're getting. I've had Botox. Look at this. I'm frowning now, and you can't see that I am, can you?" "No, there aren't any lines." "Exactly. But don't we need lines? How does the audience know you're frowning or angry or sad?" asked the young actress. "I don't know, darling, but I'm not going to grimace just because some part demands it. I'm not ruining my face for that." Molly checked these two out and found that they too were loyal to Primo Cell. She also made the first significant discovery of the evening. "Where did Primo Cell hypnotize you?" she asked the Botoxed woman. "Upstairs, in his private rooms," she replied. "How do you get to them?" "You go up the front stairs and follow the landing to the right past all the pretty bedrooms. They're so beautiful. I stayed there once," the young actress sighed. "You walk along to the end until you come to a special door, a dreamy door. It leads up some more stairs, exquisite stairs. And if you're lucky, you may go up there with Primo and have tea. Oh, it's paradise up there. You will see Primo's wonderful private rooms, his workrooms, his library, and his study. He's very interesting, intelligent. He's a brilliant man. He ought to be president. The man is a genius." That was where he spoke to me, and me. Molly looked at Rocky, who had joined her. They had to go upstairs. Molly, Rocky, and Petula waited in the main hall for an opportunity to get to the upstairs corridors without being seen. Partygoers were still arriving, and the stairs were busy with people coming and going. The security guards kept a watchful eye on the scene. Eventually, they were distracted by a journalist who was trying to gate-crash. As quick as a couple of chipmunks scrambling up a nut-laden tree, Molly, carrying Petula, and Rocky shot up the stairs and turned right. In a moment, they were panting behind a pillar, halfway down the corridor. For a minute, they watched the landing to make sure they hadn't been spotted. Then, with their hearts knocking in their chests, They sneaked down to the hall round a corner. Seconds later, they came face to face with a security guard. But Molly soon zapped him, and they walked on. They found endless bedrooms, all of which seemed to be occupied, as the different clothes laid out on the beds testified. He obviously likes having guests, whispered Molly, touching an embroidered silk bedspread. This place is like a castle, isn't it? Not as cold, though, said Rocky, and I hope it doesn't have a dungeon. It's like an art gallery, too, observed Molly as they walked quietly along. A series of airbrushed pictures of rabbits in the headlights of cars lined the wall. These were followed by portraits of people whose heads were spinning off their bodies. It's what he dreams of, whispered Molly, that everyone he hypnotizes will lose their heads to him. Do you think he painted these? Asked Rocky. No, he's a collector, but these suit him, don't they? They show what he's like underneath. They had reached the farthest end of this wing of the house. Beside a closed door, a blue neon sign flashed with the words, "A stitch in time saves 9." They guessed they were about to enter Primo's cell's quarters. Rocky tried the door. It wasn't locked. Behind it, green marble stairs led upward. Molly felt that this was like some sort of witch's tower, where a sinister spinning wheel stood waiting for them. Shutting the door behind her, she followed Rocky up the stairs. They entered a small sitting room with yellow leather walls and a lit fireplace. The burning wood smelled of limes, and the flames made shadows and light dance across the ceiling. It felt as if the room was watching its guests. Molly went over to the desk, which was covered with paperweights, each one a dandelion flower and a hard ball of clear resin. Don't touch it. It's probably alarmed. Rocky, we're not going to find out anything if I don't. Molly rattled the drawers of the desk. They were locked. This must be where those two cell worshippers said they had tea with him. There were 2 other rooms. One had file cabinets and wall cabinets in it, but those were also locked. Should have learned how to pick locks from Knockman, whispered Molly. But Rocky didn't hear her. He was already in the room opposite, eager to get out as soon as he could. This next room was a small library, lined with wooden shelves from floor to ceiling. There were all sorts of books, novels, encyclopedias, reference books, biographies, art books, plays, and books of photographs. 2 cream armchairs sat on either side of a lit fire. On a low table was a sculpture of a hand trying to grasp a heart that was flying away. 2 more strange pictures hung up on the walls. One was of a magpie wearing a crown and a blindfold. The other was of a magpie in flight, suspended by strings attached to its wings and tail. Molly read the words that were woven around the rim of the brown carpet under her feet. Knowledge is power, knowledge is power, knowledge is power, knowledge is power. She followed the words along the floor. At one point, the carpet had an odd bump in it, as if something was underneath. She bent down and felt the lump. Smiling, she lifted the carpet to reveal a brass key. Molly looked at the desk. The key was too big for the locks in its drawers. It looked like a door key. Perhaps it was for the door they'd just come through. Then Rocky saw where the key belonged. Silently, he pointed to its spot in the middle of the wall, where some hairline cracks gave away the position of a concealed door. Near the floor was a small keyhole. As quietly as she could, Molly tried the key in the lock and turned it. It clicked smoothly, and the secret door swung inward. Whatever they found behind it was something that Primo's cell didn't want anyone to see. The hidden room was another library. This one was a lot smaller than the first. In the middle was a maroon leather-topped desk with a high-backed chair. Molly, Petula, and Rocky crept in. The walls were completely lined with books, but unlike those in the previous rooms, they were all the same size and the same thickness, and their bindings were all the same color, maroon. Some were bright, some were faded, but Molly got the impression that all the books had originally been the exact same color. Molly recognized the color, but she couldn't quite place it. But when she read the gold writing on the spine of one of the books, she knew, in a horrible flash, exactly why it felt so familiar. "I don't believe it," she gasped, for there, on every single shelf of the room, were copies of the same book, a book that Molly and Rocky knew very well. Hypnotism. "I thought the Briarsville book was the only copy left in the world," gulped Molly. "So did I," whispered Rocky. "But lots
must originally have been printed. How do you think he got all of these? Asked Molly. They must have all belonged to different people. Different hypnotists, said Rocky. Something that Molly had thought only happened in cartoons now happened to her. Her legs began to shake so much that her knees actually knocked together. I wonder where they are now. Rocky said nothing. Dead? Molly blurted out in a hoarse whisper like a donkey's cough. Petula whined in sympathy. Maybe he just made them forget everything they knew about hypnotism and sent them back to where they came from, said Rocky, not wanting to acknowledge how evil Primo Cell might really be. They're like trophies, hissed Molly. They're like shrunken heads of all the hypnotists he's overpowered. Her hands were sweating as if she was in a sauna. I don't like this. We've got to get out of here. Cell's overwhelming collection of the book that had changed her life had completely unnerved her. Her own skills felt like plastic toys compared to Cell's high-tech machines. She pushed away all ideas of searching for Davina. All she wanted to do was get out of the building safely. They locked the room, re-hid the key, and cautiously made their way out of the terrible house. Downstairs, Primo Cell was pacing. For him, this was just another power-building opportunity. He liked being the center of attention and being on intimate terms with so many of Hollywood's biggest stars. They were all people he considered his. But their devotion to him made them less interesting. The guests who interested him were those he hadn't met before, and right now, the person who intrigued him the most was that plain-looking child, Molly Moon. In New York, she'd been the headlight news with her part in Stars on Mars. Her support could be very useful to him on his children's channel. He already used the pop star Billy Bob Bimble, but a famous girl would really help Cell win the hearts of American children. It had crossed his mind that the child was a hypnotist. Her sudden rise to fame, her mystery, her ordinariness, and yet her stardom, all had the stamp of a hypnotist. It was always a thrill to meet his own kind, although, of course, adult hypnotists eventually had to be disposed of. Cell sighed as he thought of Davina Nattel. He had planned to have her spearhead a big promotion campaign for Fashion House's girlwear. He didn't understand why she'd been impossible to hypnotize. Worse, it was as if something within Davina had weakened him. Molly Moon would probably be easier to hypnotize, though he'd have to be careful. She could be the new face of Fashion House. Where was Molly Moon? Primo scoured the balcony in the garden below. An owly old screenwriter was standing by the door smoking a cigarette. You know that kid star, Molly Moon? Have you seen her? Primo Cell asked. Yes, the man replied. It goes like this. Pan across the hall to an oaken front door to see a girl and friend squeezing through the crowd to leave. Close up on the girl's face. She smiles uncomfortably. Someone has recognized her. Focus on the girl's pug dog. It follows kids through the door. Fade. How long ago was that? Asked Primo. 15 minutes. They'll be in a cab by now, Primo said to himself, pressing the pad of his thumb up against his sharp incisor. Next time, suggested the screenwriter, exhaling a column of smoke. Maybe you ought to hire a children's entertainer. Molly and Rocky walked down the drive and out of Cell's front gates. They decided that it was simpler to walk all the way back to Chateau Marmont. Primo Cell's secret library had scared them both badly. I mean, why should we have to sort the Primo Cell problem out? Said Rocky. We're never going to stop him. He's too powerful. Molly agreed. It's really a job for some sort of trained agent, she said, looking across the road at a poster for an action movie. The idea that I should be able to do it is ridiculous. And it's not fair. Not at all fair. Why doesn't Lucy wait until she's better and then come do it herself? Said Molly. Here we are in one of the most amazing places on earth, complained Rocky, and we go to a party that most people would cut off their right foot to go to, but we have to miss the fun and instead snoop about and risk getting caught by Mr. Weirdo. It's not fair. Or reasonable. Grumbling like this, the two friends walked through the chilly night. Back in their bungalow, Rocky made drinks. Proper Shirley Temples. Molly reached into a cupboard for a packet of marshmallows. When are you going to call Lucy Logan and tell her you can't do the job? It'll be 7 a.m. there now. I don't think I should wake her up like I did last time. I'll call her tomorrow. Rocky knew that Molly was putting the moment off, but but he didn't comment. Molly put a marshmallow in her mouth and let it dissolve. She wanted to forget Sal and think about something nice, but she couldn't. It was impossible to get him out of her mind. If you were him, she said, giving up, what would you be planning? I wouldn't stop, said Rocky, drawing squirrely, hypnotized eyes on the faces of people in the newspaper in front of him. I'd want to control the whole of America so that everyone did as I said. I'd want to become president. Why stop there? What about world domination? Said Molly. Lucy thinks he's planning that. What's for sure, he certainly isn't just going to skip off into the sunset. I bet he wants it all. Molly looked at the familiar Moon's Marshmallows bag in her hand. The moon on it was a round white marshmallow. The earth below it was drawn like a blue marble. When Molly was little, she thought the moon was made of marshmallow, and that all the marshmallows in the bag of Moon's Marshmallows came from the moon. She also thought that babies turned up all over the world in cardboard boxes or baby carriages, like she and Rocky had. She thought they zoomed in from outer space in flying cardboard boxes and baby carriages. Do you think we're the only people in the world who know what Sal's up to? She asked. I don't know, and I don't care, said Rocky. He stopped drawing and began to tune his guitar. Molly cupped the package of marshmallows so that the little planet Earth was nestled in her hands. Imagine if we don't do anything about him, Rocky. Imagine if he starts to do really, really bad things. We could always see what happens. We can sort things out later if we need to. Later will be too late, said Molly. Molly felt most peculiar. The more she looked at the small globe on the bag, the more she felt herself part of the problem of Primo Sal. If she was the only person who could do something about him, but she did nothing, then she would, in effect, be helping him. She would be behaving as if she wanted him to succeed. And she didn't want this. She thought of all the billions of people living in the world, all the free-thinking people Primo would like to control. The small blue planet in her hands seemed to tug at Molly's heart. She couldn't let Primo win. It was totally out of the question. It's now or never, she said to Rocky. We have to try to help Davina. We have to find the secret of how Sal makes his hypnotism permanent. If we knew that, we could release his victims. Then his power would start to crumble. That's what we must do. We'll never forgive ourselves if we don't at least try to stop him. Rocky looked longingly at his guitar and groaned. I have to sneeze again. How y'all doing? I suppose we'll have to go back to the house. When? Tomorrow, said Molly, before we completely lose our nerve. You know what they say about falling off a horse? You're supposed to get right back on before you lose your nerve. My nerve is already the size of a pea, said Rocky. Mine's the size of a lentil. The next morning, Molly and Rocky woke to banging on their doors. For a moment, both panicked, thinking that Primo Sal had come to get them. Then they heard Jerry's voice begging to let him in. Come on, you two, wake up. We're going to Knott's Berry Farm. Blearily, Molly opened her door. Warm morning sunshine poured in, along with a bouncing Jerry. It's an amusement park. They've got the Perilous Plunge, and Gemma says it's the wettest roller coaster in the world. And there's the Boomerang ride, and another one called the Jaguar. Mr. Knockman's taking us all, and even Roger's coming. But we gotta go soon or there'll be big lines. Thank you. What time is it? 10 or something, I think. So get your clothes, because we gotta go now. Molly shook her head. We can't, Jerry. We gotta do something for the benefactor. Again? Oh, that's so stupid, Molly. This is gonna be brilliant fun. Molly sighed. I know. Don't rub it in. Believe me, we'd love to come with you, but we can't. But look, we will another time. I'm gonna end the TikTok because no one's there. Okay, said Jerry disappointedly. Have a great time. Don't eat too much cotton candy or you'll go all buzzy like a fly. Remember last time? And don't take your mice. They'll fall out of your pockets in the rides and get hurt. Okay, sang Jerry over his shoulder, already halfway down the path. Molly and Rocky tried to cheer themselves up by having a nice breakfast outside on their patio, but it was difficult when the Knott's Berry Farm roller coasters beckoned them and the Primo Sal business squatted, unmovable in front of them, like an ugly fat monster. Molly finished her omelette and poured herself a concentrated grenade syrup. Grenadine, not grenade. Grenadine. Rocky opened the papers and began to study the sports page. All at once, Molly felt slightly peculiar. She looked at her plate and hoped that she hadn't just eaten a bad egg. But in that very second, an icy chill swept through her. It wasn't nausea, it was something else. Instinctively, Molly resisted it. In amazement, she watched as the world around her stopped still. Molly froze as he scratched his head. For a moment, Molly thought she must be dreaming. But she wasn't. This was real. Molly looked fearfully toward the hills. Whoever had caused this time stop was somewhere over there. Quite far away, but not far away enough. Molly scooped a still wasp from the air and sat forward and listened. The world was so quiet. Apart from her anxious breathing, there was no noise. No traffic, no music, no vacuum cleaners, no lawnmowers. Just silence. For this moment, the whole world was silent. No one was laughing or crying or shouting or singing. The winds and the seas were quiet. Then suddenly, as if the pause button on the world's video player had been released, everything started again. The wasp in Molly's hand began buzzing. Molly let it go. "What are you doing, you idiot?" said Rocky. "Want to get stunned? Stung?" Then, because Molly had her green frog sitting under a rock look, he asked, "Are you okay?" Molly leaned toward him, anxious in case the world stopped again. She told Rocky what had happened. It was hard for Rocky to believe her. "Perhaps time stopping happens naturally, like an earthquake," he suggested. "This is the place for earthquakes. Maybe it's like a tiny quake. Maybe the earth did it by itself." Both considered this geological possibility. Molly didn't know what to think. "And another thing," Molly added, very perplexed. "Feel my diamond." Rocky touched it. "It's freezing." "It's not normal for diamonds to go all cold like that, is it?" she asked. "I mean, everything around the diamond is warm. My skin's warm. Shouldn't the diamond be the same temperature?" "Maybe the diamond gets charged up with cold when you get the cold fusion feeling. Maybe it holds the cold like, metal holds heat when it comes out of the oven." After breakfast, Molly and Rocky dressed themselves in jeans and t-shirts. Molly couldn't stop thinking about this strange time stop. She decided that this time it would be best if Petula stayed behind. Reluctantly, they set off. Their plan was a daring one. They intended to hide in Sel's private rooms. It was the only way they could discover how his hypnotism worked, and, they hoped, what had happened to Davina. They took a cab and were soon cruising down the Sunset Strip. Molly looked out of the window at the people in their cars doing safe things, like going to work or to the shops. Oh. She thought how lucky they all were. Once or twice, Gandoli, the smiling politician, grinned down at them from red, white, and blue election posters. Molly thought that he wouldn't stand a chance of winning if Primo Cell was after the presidency. The previous night, on their way out of Primo's mansion, Molly had hypnotized the gatekeeper to let her and Rocky pass whenever they wanted. Now they slipped into the grounds with ease. However, making their way to the front door was extremely difficult. It was as if the night before had not ended. Constant traffic motored up the gravel drive. Chauffeur-driven stretch limousines with darkened windows drove by. Molly and Rocky had to dart behind bushes and hide every half minute. What should have taken 10 minutes took 40. "Looks like he's having another party," said Molly, peering at the front door over the shell of a giant tortoise that was munching at the rose bush they were hiding behind. They watched as lots of important-looking men and women in suits arrived, accompanied by bodyguards. Molly scrutinized the arriving guests. "Those people look like politicians, don't they?" "Yep," whispered Rocky. "In fact, that's the governor of California. I've seen his picture in the paper. What is Cell up to?" Getting into the house through the front door was impossible, so Molly and Rocky commando crawled toward the top rose garden. Molly unfortunately threw a pile of peacock droppings. They sneaked past the sculptures and the Chinese carp pond until they were at the far end of the gray mansion. Here they found a small, low window that was ajar. Going first, Molly squeezed through. She felt one foot land somewhere wet. As she wiggled the rest of her body inside, she found that she'd trodden in a large sink of water. She was in a flower arranging room. Vases, baskets, and pruning shears stood on the counters, and buckets of exotic flowers lined the floor. With one foot dripping, she quickly jumped down to the linoleum floor and warned Rocky to watch his step. She wiped the peacock muck off her jeans with a cloth. "Birds' turds are supposed to be lucky," whispered Rocky. "Only if they land on you from above. Anyhow, I'm not superstitious," said Molly. They could hear what sounded like household staff talking outside the room. There was nowhere to hide among the flowers, so Molly crept to the door, ready for instant hypnosis if it should be needed. But the voices passed by, and after another moment, she peeped out into a short hallway. At the end of it was what looked like a service staircase. As quiet as cats, and glad that the walls were blue and that their denim clothes helped to camouflage them, they made a break for it and slipped upstairs. They were at the opposite end of the house from where they had been the night before. They could just hear the rumbling hum of talk and laughter from the main reception rooms. Furtively, they slipped up the next flight of stairs and came to a landing with a purple carpet. They followed it to the left. There were doors on either side of this corridor. When Molly and Rocky heard footsteps coming, they dived through the nearest one and hid behind a four-poster bed. They found themselves in a luxurious suite, with a sitting room and a bathroom attached to the bedroom. It was decorated in pinks and whites, and fluffy cushions were scattered all over the chairs and bed. Small tables with lace cloths on them displayed vases of pink lilies and tiny porcelain ornaments of dogs. The guest staying in it seemed to have really made herself at home. On the dressing table was a little silver tree hung with diamond rings. In an open box beside it were 3 diamond necklaces. When they saw Gloria Heelhart's face smiling out of a framed photograph, with several white dogs cuddling up to her, they realized that they must be in the star's bedroom. A second later, they heard a growl. Molly looked again at the bed. Its cover, which she had mistaken for a fur counterpane, was in fact a mass of live fur, still attached to its living owners. Gloria Heelhart's 10 white Pekinese were snuggled up to one another, enjoying a midday snooze. The one in the middle had broken up. Molly and Rocky felt as if they were the matches that were about to set off a box of very noisy fireworks. As silently as snakes, they slipped out. They discovered that all the suites along the passage had stars staying in them. Every room was lived in, and even had its own style, as if it had been customized for its owner. On one desktop in a man's room, Molly found a bank statement with Hercules Stone's name at the top of it. Underneath was printed an address: Magpie Manor, North Crescent Drive, West Hollywood. "He's well and truly settled if this is where his bank stuff is sent," said Rocky. "I wonder how long he's staying here for." Then, as he read the statement, he added, "Wow, he doesn't have to worry about money. $34 million. He's rolling in it." Molly found an aerosol can of something called Bye Bye Bald. She sprayed some onto her hand, and immediately her palm looked as if a patch of black hair had grown out of it. "His hair is obviously falling out," she said. She looked at 2 ruby cufflinks on the bedside table and a photograph of Hercules Stone hugging Primo Sal. "Sal keeps them here like prized possessions, like caged birds. I suppose they entertain him. He must have them stay for weeks at a time." "Amazing entertainment," said Rocky. "Imagine having any star you wanted staying with you." "We still haven't found any clues to Davina," said Molly. "But if today's business as usual for Sal, it probably means hypnotizing people. Which means, if we want to know how he works, we've got to get to his rooms quickly, Rocky. Let's not hang around here." They left Hercules Stone's bedroom and went toward the landing above the huge oak staircase. Voices greeting each other echoed up from the marble hall. From where they were, they had a bird's-eye view of heads, bald ones, half-bald ones, and others that looked like well-groomed hairy animals. "Politicians, army swells, and celebrities," said Molly. "I see his game. He gets government and army people here by promising them that they'll meet the stars. He knows that even politicians get starstruck. I wouldn't be surprised if Sal plans to get a few politicians under his thumb before the end of today." Molly and Rocky darted along the hall to Sal's wing of the house. They passed the pictures of rabbits beings stunned in the glare of lights. They came to the blue neon sign that flashed "A stitch in time saves 9," and then tremendously, they stepped up the green marble stairs that led to Primo Cell's nerve center. They were gambling that Cell would be entertaining his guests downstairs, but the thought that they might come face to face with him was like a menacing black cloud in their minds. Molly's ears thumped as her heart pumped hard and sent blood throbbing through her head. But when they got to the top of the stairs, the coast was clear. They slipped quickly into Cell's lime-smelling study. Just as they did so, they heard 2 deep voices echoing in the hallway. The voices were coming their way. Molly's wits went on strike, and she didn't know what to do. She found herself looking in the fire's log basket to see whether she could hide there. Luckily, Rocky kept his head and tugged her toward the open curtains. They each took a side of material and pulled the dark green velvet about them. Hiccupy. Letting it settle so that the drop of the curtains looked natural. Molly concentrated on quieting her breathing. As she looked up inside the green tube of material around her, she felt like a caterpillar in a cocoon. The door clicked open and then shut as the 2 people entered. Molly immediately recognized Primo Cell's liquid velvet voice. "So here's where I make it all happen," he was saying. "My home study. This is where I think and relax. Oh, and where I write checks." Molly heard Primo, agonizingly near to her hiding place, turning a key and opening a drawer in his desk. She swallowed. Inside her head it sounded like water sluicing down a drain. "Ah, yes, my charity checkbook. Here it is." "This is really very kind of you, Mr. Cell," said another man's voice. "Not at all, General. It really is my pleasure. Please, call me Primo." Molly's chest tightened. As far as she could remember, the general was the highest rank in the army. "Thank you, and you must call me Donald." "Donald, it's nothing. My own mother was a widow, so I myself never grew up with a father. I know firsthand how much it will help these families if they get help from your charity. Please sit down." Molly heard a leather chair give way under the general's bottom, and then a creak as Primo Cell sat too. "Who should I make the check out to?" asked Cell. "The U.S. Army Widows Fund," came the reply. "Will $10 million be sufficient for now?" The general gave an audible gulp. Absolutely. More than enough. I'm stunned by your generosity." Hang on, I gotta blow my nose. And also chapstick. Very important. Oh. For a moment, Molly wondered whether she, Rocky, and Lucy Logan had Primo figured out all wrong. Perhaps he was using his hypnotism to do good. There was silence, and Molly pricked up her ears. The sound of a nib on paper scratched the air. There was a long pause, and then she heard a noise that sounded something like this. Bleh. It came from the general. Molly knew at once what was happening. Now they were going to find out how Primo Cell locked his hypnotism in. "Good," said Cell as if he were talking to a child. "Now you, Donald, are completely under my power. You will forget that I promised your charity a gift. You won't remember our meeting here. Instead, you will remember a wonderful lunch party at my house. In a minute, you will return to the other guests, thinking that you have merely been to the bathroom. From this moment on, you will do my bidding, and your obedience will be firm and unmovable. You will stay under my power, always, always, always." Behind the curtain, Molly shivered. A chill as cold as a breeze from the heart of a glacier rose through her, and her diamond suddenly froze. She let the icy feeling wash through her, but not seize her. And as time stopped, she realized 2 things. The first was the startling fact that Primo Cell could stop time, and the second was that this was how he locked in his hypnosis. He stopped the world while his victims were hypnotized, and somehow that sealed his power. In his chair opposite the general, Primo Cell sat up as if someone had given him an electric shock. The hairs on the back of his neck bristled as he sensed resistance. Someone alert and breathing was here in this very room. He rose and with 3 powerful steps crossed to the window. He snatched the velvet aside. Molly would have screamed, but terror had seized her throat. For a second, Primo Cell looked shocked, amazed even. He rarely came across people who could keep moving in a time stop. You? He barked. Molly Moon. I should have guessed. Recovering, Molly focused her eyes on him. He began to laugh. Oh, you disappoint me, he said. I thought that you might be pupil material, but I can see from your face that this is not the case. And no doubt your accomplice is here too. Cell whisked Rocky's curtain roughly aside. Ha! But still is a statue. Not as accomplished as you, I see. Cell grabbed Molly's arm. You two are gonna wish you'd stayed at home today, he hissed. He hauled Molly toward the frozen general. Then, putting his hand on the man's shoulder, he did an astounding thing. Molly felt Primo Cell send a wave of cold fusion feeling out of himself into the general, so that the man stirred, and suddenly the general could move again. Pick up the boy, Primo Cell ordered him, but at no point let my hand lose touch with you. This, Molly realized, was so the man didn't freeze again. The general obediently rose and picked up Rocky, who bent like a rag doll under his left arm. Now hold the girl. Don't let her go. The general's massive right hand clenched Molly's puny biceps. Good. Now we must hurry. With his free hand, Primo Cell reached for a button inside the top drawer of his desk. A bookshelf in the room sprang open to reveal a door. We may look ridiculous like this, said Cell as he maneuvered himself behind Molly and the general, but looks can be deceiving, especially in Hollywood. Take me, for instance. He pushed them toward a secret door. People think I'm a marvelous person, a benefactor, someone they can look up to. But I'm not any of those things. I'm selfish and greedy. Molly suddenly found her wits as she saw a stairwell below her. Was this where Cell had brought Davina? She pulled away from the general's hand and began to shout. Help! Somebody help me! But of course, no one could hear her. In the grand sitting room, politicians stood like sculptures, champagne glasses in their hands and rigid expressions of enthrallment on their faces as they spoke to celebrities. If the world had been moving, the hubbub of conversations would have drowned Molly's cries. As it was, the air was still as a picture, with sound suspended, so Molly's distant screams, as Primo propelled her down the stairs, were audible in the hall. One person did hear the shouting. One person had casually walked away from the frozen lunch party and was cleaning his nails with a toothpick. As he placed the used toothpick into the outstretched hand of Stephanie Goulash, Sinclair Cell's phone went off. He pressed its answer button. I'm on my way, he said lazily. Sinclair, get here right now, came his father's impatient reply. Sinclair looked into his phone screen at Cell's stern face. As you can hear, I'm having a bit of trouble. Cell turned his phone to transmit a picture of Molly yelling and the general with a frozen Rocky under his arm. Come here and help me. Okay, coming up. Trouble is, I was talking to Miss Gross-Took when you stopped the clock. She'll wonder how I suddenly disappeared when things start moving again. Forget her. The woman drinks too much anyway. She'll just think she's having a hallucination. Okay. Molly was pushed roughly down the stone staircase. It went farther and farther down, as if it was spiraling to hell itself. Her arm felt sore in the general's iron grip. She was starting to feel exhausted. It was very tiring resisting the freeze while shouting at the same time. Get off me, she yelled again and again, but her efforts were useless. Twisting, Molly turned her eyes on Cell. Her smoldering look rolled off him like water off wax. You've got a nerve. Little girls shouldn't play with fire, you know, or ice for that matter. Primo Cell suddenly brought his strange party to a halt. Take off the crystal. Molly wondered how on earth Cell knew she was wearing a diamond. No, I won't, she said. It's mine. Take it off or I'll take it off for you, Primo said grimly. Molly was amazed. Primo Cell had to be one of the richest people in the world, and at a moment like this he had his mind on diamonds. He was completely materialistic. Molly supposed it was her payment, her punishment. You're a mean, greedy, ugly man, she sobbed back. You're worse. You're scum. You don't need this, but I do. Molly thought of the orphan's children, of the unpaid bill back at the hotel, of the dwindling money at Happiness House, of nothing much to eat, of difficult times ahead. You can't have it. You won't be needing it where you're going, Sal stated coldly. Give it to me right now. Molly heard the threatening tone of his voice and quailed. She was so tired. She had no more strength to resist. She reached for the catch on her necklace's chain. The diamond had absorbed the cold from her body and felt like ice against her skin. She undid the catch, but still clutched the diamond. I suppose you'll let Gloria Heelheart borrow it, and won't she be thrilled, she whispered. But you know what? If she knew what you were really like, she'd hate you. All your hypnotized people would. Oh my, so you have no idea of your crystal's true power, said Sel dryly. He reached out and took the jewel from Molly's hand, and although Molly didn't know it, she froze. We'll do one more chapter, and then we'll stop. The general now carried 2 still children down the stone stairwell. They had descended below ground level, and as they wound farther down, light came up from below. The stone wall was replaced by thick glass, and the staircase descended like a tube of ice into a vast white cathedral-sized space. They reached the bottom and stopped. This room was massive and modern, like a very big art gallery, although there were no art on its walls. Instead, in its center was what looked like a strange sculpture. It was a large steel tower. From its top, a long pole stretched parallel to the ceiling, and in the distance, something large and heavy was fixed to the end of it. At the foot of the tower was a steel bench. Sinclair's cell sat on it, looking at his reflection in a pocket mirror. Sinclair, you could have come and helped me, you lazy toad, said Primo. Help me now. Tie their arms behind their backs. Sal instructed the general to put Molly and Rocky on the ground. The immobile pair lay there like dead fish, and Sinclair came over and tied them up. Then Sal let the world come out of its freeze. Immediately, Molly and Rocky's time started again. Both were shocked to find how they'd been moved. As far as Rocky was concerned, he had just been behind the curtain, while Molly's time had stopped when Primo had snatched the diamond from her. A few seconds later, she gasped as she realized what had happened. So the diamond is connected to time stopping. Primo paid no attention to her. He was standing by a small metal box and turning dials inside it. Molly and Rocky struggled to sit up. Both their eyes were drawn like magnets to the pole at the top of the tower and the heavy object on the end of it. Something solid and menacing, all black and white. At the same time, Primo Cell pulled a handle. The black and white thing began to tumble. Then it was swooping downward, and in the next second, a huge metal magpie, with wings outstretched in full flight, was plummeting toward them. It flew past, a heavy, deadly bird of prey, its thick sword-like beak and weighty body hurtling low over the steel bench. If Sinclair had still been sitting there, the bird would have slammed right into him. Molly followed its flight. On its long pole, it was guided up to the other side of the gallery ceiling, where it hovered as its weight shifted. Then, as gravity pulled it down again, it began its backwards descent, targeting the seat. Its guillotine-sharp tail cut through the air with a whoosh noise, sending a breeze through Molly's hair. I'm glad you're not superstitious, Rocky said to Molly, because one magpie is supposed to mean bad luck. Beautiful, isn't it? Said Sel, as if showing them a priceless treasure. It's my magpie pendulum. It can even keep time. It can swing backward and forward all day long, and there's a clock up on the wall there. Do you see? Looking proudly up at his monster, Sel pushed a button, and with a mechanical, bird-like screech, the magpie stopped high in the air. Sel walked over toward the bench and lightly patted its metal seat. Here, Molly, you sit here. Molly shook her head in horror. Sitting in the line of the killer magpie was the last place in the world that she wanted to be. Bring her over here, Sel ordered the general, who, like a hypnotized retrieving dog, hang on. Come on. Hello? Recognize my face, please. Okay. Like a hypnotized retrieving dog lifted Molly over to the bench. Sinclair kept a firm hand on Rocky. As soon as Molly's feet were under the seat, 2 metal clamps seized her ankles. No, Molly angrily. You can't make me sit here. You're completely insane. She struggled wildly with the metal bonds, but Sel was as unperturbed. Alright, give me a second, yo. Sorry about that. We're almost done. But Sel was as unperturbed as if he were waiting for the kettle to boil. He watched Sinclair shove Rocky, kicking and shouting, onto the bench beside Molly. Sinclair checked that both sets of ankle locks were tightly fastened. Activated by a remote control device in Sel's hand, metal belts slid like evil snakes from behind the prisoners and snapped shut about their waists. Now time for a bit of fun, said Sel with a laugh. Molly raised her eyes to the horrible death bird above her. She and Rocky were directly in its path. You wouldn't dare, she shouted, looking from Primo to the control box to the remote in his murderous hand. Sel pulled back the sleeve of his cashmere suit and checked his gold watch. Then he took Molly's diamond from his top pocket and handed it to Sinclair. As if with telepathic understanding, Sinclair put it back around Molly's neck. Sel tapped a few buttons on the remote control. Miss Magpie is programmed, he announced. In roughly 2.5 minutes, she will fall again. When she does, well, you've seen my princess in action. I'm sure you can imagine the weight of her. Her beak is sharp as a... What do we call those kitchen knives we sell, Sinclair? Schlick-schlacks. As sharp as a schlick-schlack, and her tail is deadly. Both are exquisitely sharp and heavy, so you needn't worry. Whichever end you choose, it'll be quick. You're crazy, screamed Molly. She was confused as to why Sinclair had hung her diamond around her neck, but unable to take her eyes off the killer bird. You can't chop us up with your magpie. What kind of lunatic are you? But then she noticed the drain grills on the floor and a silver reel of hose attached to the wall. She turned desperately to Rocky. The look that he returned was as wild and frightened as her own. Molly's lower lip trembled. Please, Mr. Sel, she said in a small, surrendering voice. Please don't do this to us. Just let us go and we won't bother you anymore. Please don't make us sit here when the bird falls. Primo Sel ignored her. I correct myself. In 2 minutes, the magpie will move again. You, of course, Molly Moon, can freeze the world. Sinclair has given you back the crystal. So you actually have longer than the 2 minutes I'm allowing you to decide on your exact fate. How long can you stop the world for? Personally, I find 10 minutes is about my limit. It's so exhausting, isn't it? Thanks to you, I'm now tired before my lunch party, which is irritating. I prefer to be well rested whenever I work. Sel loosened his silk tie. You know, Molly, it's odd how you never realized that crystals are essential to stopping time. Didn't you notice how cold it became when you used it? Didn't you realize that crystal is not a conductor of heat? Don't they teach you anything at school these days? Sel unbuttoned his collar and pulled out a thin silver chain from under his shirt. On it was a huge, clear crystal that reflected and refracted the white light of the torture chamber, sparkling as if in sinister greeting. "Show them yours," he ordered Sinclair. Sinclair wore a strip of leather around his neck, on which was yet another large, shiny gem. "Now," said Sel, examining his cufflink, "I'd love to talk about all of this, but I really must be getting back to my guests. Maybe another time. I forgot." Primo eyed the drains. "What a waste. Anyway, Molly, and, I never did catch your friend's name. But have a good 11 minutes. Bon voyage." As Sel lifted a hand in farewell, Molly summoned all her strength to turn her eyes up to full hypnotic power, and she raised them to Primo Sel's. Her gaze flew through the air and hit him full in the face. The impact almost knocked him backward. My, Molly, I wasn't expecting that." Then he turned away, repeating, "What a waste." He beckoned for his son and the general to follow him, and they started up the glass stairs. Molly heard him say, "Sinclair, this staircase is beautiful, but it's a bore to climb. Remind me to install an elevator." And that's where we'll have to stop. Will our heroes die? We don't know. We still have this much of the book left, if that's any indication. But they certainly are in a pickle. And we shall see what happens to them next Thursday. Wait. Yeah, the 28th. Yeah, that's all good. So, lovely narrator. I hope you guys enjoyed your little nap. And thanks for joining me. I hope you were able to retain some of the story being said. But if you didn't, that's okay too. Yeah, I'll see you guys on what? I guess on Tuesday. Yeah. I don't know what we'll do, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, bye. Don't you always just feel like the world stops when you look in my eyes? Like you're frozen in place, just caught staring endlessly, caught in the depths, completely lost, as your will slowly belongs to me.